Okay, got you. Cool. All right, Bren, we're good to go.
I'm ready.
And I had to take advantage of this extremely rare moment where you were actually in the city that you live in because you've been here for 3 weeks in 2023.
Yeah,
and you
I
have
haven't
an
been here
apartment
much.
here.
Yeah, I was. Well, I've been traveling a lot. I've been busy, but yeah, this was the one opportunity where I'm in Austin. You grabbed me, you nailed me down, you nailed me down for the one night that I was free, and I'm flying tomorrow.
Yeah, listen, I tried to schedule this out perfectly so we could get it right before then, and I would kind of drag you in like, no, I'll bring you to the airport tomorrow. I'll help you bring your bags.
That's fine.
We'll squeeze this in 3 hours before you have to go. Did you manage to not inadvertently create a unique ecosystem within your apartment this time while you were gone?
I don't really know, to be honest, because I'm gonna be honest. When I was packing everything up, the previous times, I mean, listen, I would leave over the winter, so I'd leave the pipe stripping. Perfectly normal thing to do if you live in a city with horrible infrastructure that can't withstand the cold. Because you're like, I don't want my pipes to burst. I don't want to come back to a flooded apartment or house. Did that. Came back to like new genres of mold being developed in my home, just in the sinks and bathtubs. And I think I've probably just like every time I've come back, I've probably been living with some variation of black mold, just like somewhere in the apartment hidden. Because black mold's really hard to get rid of. So I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm just saying, when I've been moving my furniture, there's just been smudges every now and then. So I mean, just who knows? I mean, I could have just been breathing in fumes that have just been slowly lobotomizing me without me realizing every time.
Alternatively, you're just training your body and immune system to withstand anything that the world may have to throw at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
but
mean,
none most recently.
Right. Glad you took care of that.
Which was good.
Yeah. Now this is a big moment for us in our journey. But we're leaving the compound.
Yeah,
Plat Chat compound. Been there for a long time. Well, you already left a little bit, but you moved across the street.
I did. Yeah, I didn't move
so
far.
You didn't really move far at all. But
yeah,
for myself and
it's the end of an era.
Kurt, yeah, this era is coming to a close. Yeah. I'm going to be staying in Austin as well, but yeah, it was some fun times.
Yeah,
the co-streams.
I'm a little sad about it.
You're sad about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. I'm going to miss, man, when we were able to do the shows in person, all lined up, just ducks in a row at the table with you, me, and Josh.
Yeah.
Those were some really fun times.
Yeah, even the co-streams as well. The in-person couch co-streams. Those were awesome, honestly. Like, as reflecting on it, I was like, man, they were so fun to do. And I was just thinking, like, if we did it now, with how big the show has gotten now, and everything else that comes with it, because like Valorant's like almost doubled in popularity, essentially. It's like how I'm measuring it. I don't know. At least our show almost has, like, if not tripled from where we were at. If we did those now, I'm like, maybe I should get fired. maybe I should get fired.
Yeah, oh man. I mean, also just thinking back to the early ones that we did in the house in LA, and like the like dark brown wood table with the matching dark brown shelves behind us. That was not a good set.
That was not a good set.
All.
I mean, that was the depression era for me, because that was like we weren't even out on the tail end of COVID. I mean, we were like still deep in it during the pandemic. Yeah, like in that era. And it's only until we moved to Austin that it felt like finally we were getting some respite from one side of like the pandemic to the other, because then there was like vaccines on the horizon, and then we could go outside.
And we did go outside.
Yeah,
as soon as we waited that out, you, me, and Wilkinson. We were just talking about it before we walked in, but with Wilkinson trying to save the crawfish. Yeah, man was toasted, and then
that was an absolute
fell in the creek.
That was an insane night of just what were we doing? It was like one of the early times we went out straight on the other side of the pandemic, and we decided to go out to 6th Street, because it was 6th Street that we went out to. and we went to that gaming bar, which was just horrific. I mean, just awful, gaudy decorations. Like the drinks were like syrup and alcohol, essentially, just horrific. And like the classic, like if you're in a big city, if you're in like a college town or whatever, you'll get the people who are testing diamonds with a mic in your face. And that was what I got from the crawfish guy. I'm trying to provide context for the viewers, for the listeners.
Oh my God, yeah, I forgot it started because we got approached by a crawfish entrepreneur salesman.
I don't know, some guy who was living off daddy's money. That's all I know, because he had the look of it, and he just loved crawfish, and he was like trying to open up a crawfish. He had a place where he had a restaurant, but the entire time he's piss drunk. Like he's just describing us to it. And I mean, working at the place at the same time, but he had money to have a place on 6th Street that was selling crawfish broil. And he was trying to sell us on the idea of it in this bar. Just came up to us while we were drinking, and I remember he had his girlfriend next to him, and she was just kind of like holding back, just smiling the whole time. And I was just like, what is going on? I feel like I'm being indoctrinated into a cult in this moment.
Oh my God. I forgot about that. But yeah, that's why when we were walking up and down the street, there were crawfish scattered about that then Josh took unto himself to save them. To be Steve Irwin and just try and rescue these poor crawfish. And then, ended up falling into a creek, going after a crawfish. Because he jumped down like 6 feet.
I wasn't there for this, by the way.
He jumped down, planted right onto just a mossy rock and slipped back instantly. And he was just sopping, and he was just sad and walked back,
muddy and wet in his chinos or whatever the
pizza.
Fuck he was
you know he had his. You know he had his he had the chinos, he has his little Clarks on, sweater, fisherman.
No, I was buying pizza in line with Beth at the time.
Yeah,
and that was a night. I mean, we definitely went out.
Yeah, no, we've had some times.
I don't go outside anymore.
Just stream 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I stream a lot and I don't go outside. And people ask me to go outside, and I'm like, nah.
So you got that out of your system in the early Overwatch League days, or what?
Yeah. I don't think I saved any money from the first 2 years of the Overwatch League. It literally, I'm not kidding. I funded the owner of Guildhall Bar, which is like a bar in Burbank. It's like this like board game bar. His name's Spencer. I don't know if he's got kids or what, but they're going to college. I made sure of it. The amount of money I spent, I swear to God, my entire paycheck just went. I think me and Josh went out almost every single night at that point. Because we were just like, we were around the age. We were so young that we were like in that era of like university drinking culture, where you would go out, if you were like university students are going out all the time, right? And so we were like same mindset, just like still in that UK drinking culture, like kind of mindset. And so we were going out every single night, but we realized, I had this realization, Josh, I remember, he said to me, he was like, I had this realization that, when we're at uni, we're drinking like uni students, but uni students don't have unbelievable levels of income that are being provided to them and free time like in the evenings onwards. Like they don't have the same levels as that. Like they have the free time, but they don't have the income to drink every day. But we did, and it didn't stop us. Like so we just spent it all.
And also, I mean, what's funny, but I mean, after that as well, just the Overwatch League slowly slipping and your pay decreasing. Yes. Just young, ignorant. And I mean, going out in Los Angeles.
Oh, God.
Oh my! I can only imagine how much you spent as well just on Korean barbecue.
We actually didn't go out.
Really?
Yeah, we didn't go out
because that's like, I mean, that's just the esports rite of passage that you have to go to Korean barbecue at least 20 times a year if you're working in the industry.
It's out of the way. It's like in LA where we were living in Glendale. Yeah. And it was just out of the way, kind of. I mean, it's reasonably close, but we didn't really make an often trip of it. In 2019, we kind of did, because Seth and Wolf, they both live in Korea. They were working the league and living there that year, so we would go out every now and then, like much more. But 2018, no, it was all going to the charity of Guildhall. It just, and I'm not kidding. It was like $100 a night almost.
7 days a week and with the rent there and everything.
Yeah.
Also, was that fresh off? You were working at Tesco.
Yes.
Straight into Blizzard Entertainment. Decided
Yes.
that you were worthy of being in the Overwatch League.
Yeah. Well,
just from 0 to 100.
That was it was mainly Puckett that was like I don't know, vouching for me, I guess. Don't know what he saw in me at the time, but it was just before the Overwatch League, there was a 6-week stint in Colorado, and me and Josh both got hired for that, and we worked it. It was like Contender Season 0 or something like that, and I was casting, but I was casting with like, I think it was ZP mainly, and Josh was on the desk at Puckett, but he liked mine and Josh's energy so much, like in person when we were just hanging out, that he was vouching super hard to get me on the analyst desk, even though I wasn't an analyst. Like I was only a play-by-play caster. So he like vouched super hard for that. And I think there was some people that didn't want me involved for obvious reasons. Why you don't want a 21, 22-year-old like getting that level of like just jump up, because with that came a whole bunch of just ego inflation, obviously. Just because, you know, you think you're hot shit because you're working in like a tier 1 product. I mean, it was tier 1 from a production standpoint, maybe not like the viewership standpoint, but yeah, very grateful for the opportunity though. I mean, it was like, a lot of life lessons learned throughout that time. Definitely a lot of life lessons, but yeah, I went from
growth period,
that 6-week stint where like, I think Puckett eventually vouched for me and I got into that. But just before that, I remember getting the offer and I was still working at Tesco's, and I was like, oh, should I quit? Should I quit my job like for this? Like it's only 6 weeks. There's no guarantee like that I'll get anything. Should I really quit? And because I can't get 6 weeks off, I have to quit to like work this event for 6 weeks. And I remember like thinking about it, but that's just because, you know, people are scared of change. It's quite natural, but absolutely. Like if I sat down young Brennan now, I'd be like, what are you dumb? Like, what are you doing? Just, yes, quit your job that you can get anywhere else with no prior experience.
You were, what was it, like repairing computers? Or
yeah, it was like the tech support section.
Like the
initially,
Best Buy
it was like
Geek Squad?
Yeah, it was like the Geek Squad of Tesco initially. And then I moved into like the phone shop. I had like many ups and downs.
At Tesco?
Yeah, Tesco. My Tesco career it spanned many departments. I went all the way from I started in the tech department. That was a haven because I got hired during a hiring freeze because I peepo talked in my interview about how I managed and ran my TF2 team filled with international players from across Europe and had to like manage
that.
Yes. No, it's all about how you sell it. You can sell anything in an interview as long as you're charismatic enough and you're like passionate enough. But I was like talking like, yeah, I have to manage these schedules of all these different time zones across Europe and these players, and I have to make sure that they all work together and it's like they're all compatible. I have to manage our practice schedules, have to make sure like everybody's aligned with that. And yeah, they were like, wow, we're so impressed. And like, this guy knows tech, this guy knows that. He's like, he'll be perfect for the tech department. He'll be perfect. We'll put him in. And I remember I showed up my first day and they were like, oh, they never told us you were getting hired. Like we had no manager because again, hiring freeze. So we had no manager and it was just 3 dudes who were just in this corner of the store forgotten about. And we were forgotten about in the system for like a year and a half, if not 2 years.
So forgotten about in what
well, because
way?
Big monolithic corporations, they move at monolithic pace when it comes to change. And so the reason they put a freeze hire on it is because they were cutting the entire department. But obviously the manager who's hiring doesn't know that. And they just like put me in there because they thought I'd be a good fit. And so obviously the corporate overlords know they're cutting this department out, but then it takes 2 years to do it because it's a lot of moving parts to cut out an entire chunk of a company. But bro, I mean, I went there and I tell you, Tesco has never seen a better tech support guy than me because what
were you doing?
I had loyal followers at Tesco's. I had loyal followers of like 80-year-old grand women who like their grandmothers their children couldn't be bothered to do tech support for them. I'd be like, absolutely, I'll stay here for 9 hours and fix your laptop that you bought from us, even though I'm not supposed to. And I would just fix people's laptops and stuff, not like physically opening them up, but I'd like clean them up, like reset them or whatever, just making sure that they were in like good state. Like if they weren't turning on, any software stuff I would solve. And yeah, but we had no oversight at all for like the first few. It was a perfect job. I also worked with, funny enough, in that same department, and we were the kings of DOSing. I'm telling you, like DOSing, just like slacking off. We were the kings of it. Me and him, but the guy who did my tattoo, like this thing,
right?
A guy called
It's a
Bailey.
very wholesome story.
Yeah.
This is
Bailey draws, and he would be
from the bottom story.
He would be doodling all the time. We were working at the like for Tesco or whatever, and now he's like a famous tattoo artist. I hit him up recently, actually, when I was over in the UK. It was like just after Copenhagen, I guess, in 2022. But yeah, and he did that for me and drew it up. But yeah, he also is so weird to think about because he's like very successful in his own sphere, and I'm relatively successful in my sphere. But the fact that we both came from the corner of this one Tesco store in Brockworth, Gloucester, is just so funny to me. God. It's hilarious. Yeah.
Listen, I've got a few follow-ups. First of all, when you were convincing them that your Team Fortress 2 management prowess was worthy of slipping through the hiring freeze, what division were you and your team in?
Oh, I think we had just gotten to mid. I think we had just gotten into mid division. We were like sat at the very bottom, and I didn't convince her to let me through the hiring. I didn't say like, hey, I'd be a great fit for the tech department. I just peepo talked her ear off about just like that, and also like tech, like gaming. And she was like, oh, gaming tech, cool. And just like, I don't know, I just talked about what I'm passionate about, but I sold it in such a way that it was very like, it was translatable skill-wise, I guess. Like the stuff that interviewers want to hear. It's just like, I knew what to say to like get hired for this shitty Tesco job that they were hiring for. Like, and I showed up in a suit. She was like, oh, you showed up in a suit? No one ever does that. It's just like, I was like, what? Yeah, I showed up in a suit for the Tesco job, man.
Was it like your, was it your suit for school or?
I think it was like I think it was my prom suit or something.
Because I remember there was some suit. I don't know if this is a figment of my imagination, but I swear I remember seeing some image of you in just an ill-fitting suit that was just too large for your.
Was it when we were recording the bird ring advertisement in the house?
No,
because I was doing the bit with the extra wide suit.
Man, I don't know where this is coming from in my.
I've worn many an ill-fitting suit in my time of broadcasting. I pulled it off well. Yeah.
God. Okay. And then, all right. Was that the job that you were weighing up? Like, should I leave the Tesco IT department? I mean, that was worth it to change.
Well, it was like, but at that point, the tech department got dismantled, and I moved into the mobile phone store in the same store, and then my family, basically my mum and my sister, well, my mum mainly, she wanted to try and emigrate to Australia around that time in the middle portion. And because she just got a nursing degree and she wanted to try and put it to use to try and get a better life. The only opportunities were available in like the north of Australia, which is like in Darwin, basically. And Darwin is like, I've been to Darwin. It's not a great place to live, really. So she tried to do that and she like sacrificed a lot. But in that meantime, I was like essentially living by myself in that middle portion of Tesco. And it also meant that because I didn't drive or anything, I moved to a closer store. And that was just hell. Like living by myself, like it's good, but also when I was suffering through so many like mental problems in terms of just anxiety, depression, all at the same time, and then being forced to stand on your own 2 feet, like not for any fault of my mum, because she was also trying to seek a better life for herself, but then just as a side effect of that was brutal for me. And it's also coincidentally when I got into like commentary in esports, because it was an escape mechanism from my depression. Like that's literally the whole reason I got into casting, was because like it was just a way to just escape the monotony of like realizing that I had squandered my life. At the time, I thought I'd squandered my life. Now I know it's very hard to squander your life. There's always opportunities to change and seek change and improve yourself in some way or form and do something else, regardless of how bad it really seems. But at the time, I was like in a really, really bad mental state, and it was my lifeline. You know, it was just streaming in this flat with a flatmate. And I remember being at the time, like I was so just riddled with anxiety and everything else that I just wouldn't leave my room. Like I was just so anxious to even leave my room and interact with my roommate and like her boyfriend, this tiny flat that I was living in, paying like barely anything for a room. And it was just, yeah, it was brutal times. It was absolutely, I mean, just brutal times. That was, yeah. But yeah, streaming at that point was my escape mechanism, and like casting as a result of that as well, and everything else on just whatever internet we had. But yeah, the Tesco era spans a lot, because when I got pulled out of that, it was when my mum came back to the UK. Because it didn't work out with her trying to emigrate. Like they tried it didn't work out. She came back, and then I ended up moving back in with her, and that was like the safety net I needed desperately, because she pulled me out of that environment, and you know, I was just living in like an absolute like shithole in terms of my room, because I wasn't cleaning up after myself, I wasn't cooking, I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't sleeping properly or anything. I was literally living off of donations from my stream. They would donate me money, and I would walk to a McDonald's across the street and get like 20-piece chicken nuggets.
Were you staying live with that at the time?
And I would live stream it.
Oh my God, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. I would live stream on my phone. I would live off like 20-piece chicken nuggets a night. And I was like, that would be like the only thing I'd eat for like a day at a time. That's what I'd do. It was a horrible life. But I got pulled out of that when my mum moved back, thankfully. And that was when everything just started to finally, you know, not click again, but like everything started to come together in a much better way, because like I moved back to the old Tesco store that I initially started at, but that cushy tech job wasn't there anymore, and there wasn't a slot at the mobile phone shop. So I had to like do a job that they call it .com, which is basically like bagging people's online groceries, which is, I mean, it's probably the hardest job at Tesco, I would say, like in terms of grunt work, because it's like very demanding in terms of what you have to do. I never gave a fuck. I just like, oh, they want this as a substitute. Fuck it, let's grab that. Just like put it in. Not messing up people's orders intentionally, but wasn't getting paid enough to really care. But it was a good place to be in, because I was finally home. I was eating well, a bit better. I was exercising like more often, because the schedule had me getting up super early in the morning. I like found myself getting up at like 4 a.m. and I would walk an hour to get to the Tesco store. And I'd do the work. I'd come back like midday, and I would like, I don't know, watch Overwatch esports and like create like video pieces, and I would stream more, but in a much better, healthier environment, rather than it solely being the escape mechanism, even though it kind of was. But yeah, it was, and that's at that point was when I started getting more gigs, I guess, more opportunities. I remember the first big one was Takeover 2. It's an Overwatch LAN event. And me and Josh got hired for it. I think it was off of Mitch's recommendation, like Mitch Leslie, Uber. I've got a lot of respect for Mitch. But yeah, I got hired for that one, and I saved up enough days off to work that. And then off the back of that, like a couple of weeks later, was the offer to go to Colorado. And then I was just like, ooh, should I leave? I don't know. Ooh. And then I just quit, and then went ADHD moment. Just.
Yeah, how was that one with explaining that to your family? Were they on board? Did they understand?
Yeah.
Also, shout out to your some funny memory that just came back to my brain as well, was spending Thanksgiving with Kurt, you, and your family when they visited, and your grandmother just being convinced that my name was Craig, and she just kept calling me Craig. That's just,
yeah, my family.
And your mom was like, "That's not his name."
Yeah, they are.
Why. And she just convinced it was Craig.
I don't know why, but my family, they are an absolute whirlwind. But yeah, I wouldn't change it for anything, man. That was an interesting time, that Thanksgiving dinner. Well, it was like Christmas basically, because I flew them out for December.
Was it Christmas? Yeah, maybe it was.
It was like Christmas time.
It's tough to remember.
Yeah. But it was like not on Christmas. I flew them out just before. Christmas, and then they went back for actual Christmas Day. But it was because just because I had the means to, and I wanted to bring them out to America. They'd never been before. So that was a good time. It was a fun time. And I can't remember what I was talking about before this.
Oh, I had an intrusive thought about your grandmother calling me Craig for 2 days straight, which was off the back of me asking how your whirlwind of a family comprehended, reacted to, and understood that you were going to leave Tesco and your home to go to Colorado to do the gaming thing that is incredibly hard to explain unless you just say it's like sports commentary.
Yeah, and
then they think that you're casting EA games.
Yes,
that happens to me all the time.
That happens to me every time I go through border control and try and explain what I do to the US border agent. And I'm like, I've got all the valid paperwork here, and yet still I'm like talking to them. I'm like, dude, they could just please don't deport me for thinking my job is fake. Please don't just deny me at the border. But my mum is very supportive. Actually, she was always. Like, her parenting style was very laissez-faire, which is just, let it be for any not French knowers. It was just like a very, very just like laid-back policy of just, as long as I was happy, that's all she cared about. Like, as long as I was, like, happy with what I was doing, that was the only thing that mattered. My grandmother was not like that. She's very, I'm not going to say capitalist pilled, but she's very, like, almost old style UK honor bound in terms of what professions are worthwhile pursuing. And so like you must become a doctor, a lawyer, like an army man, like an officer in the army would be fantastic, Brennan. Like you should do this, because she's just from that generation in the UK. And no one's like in our family really did anything with themselves, quote unquote, did anything with themselves. So that was like drilled into me on her side. And when I failed my education, just started working at Tesco, I think she just gave up on me. I think she just gave up, and she was like, whatever, okay, as long as you're healthy and happy. Because I think she also saw how bad I was because both my nan, my sister, and my mum went over to Australia for that stint. And that's why I think when she came back and just saw how bad of a state I was. I mean, she's probably just glad that I was in a happy and healthy place. But yeah, my mum was always very supportive, even if she didn't really understand it. My family still don't understand really well. I mean, they do, but like they don't know how to find my Twitch stream, for example. They don't know how to find the podcast. They don't know how to find Plat Chat. They don't know how to find the stream when I'm on. Like they're not particularly technologically minded. The technology confuses them on a day-to-day basis. They are constantly wrangling with it, so they don't know really what I do. I'm in the abyss, when it comes to what I do. But yeah, I think when I got hired for the Germany thing, the Takeover 2 event, and I actually got paid for an event, my mum was like, "Oh wow, okay, so like, oh, that's very good." Like, and my nan was like, "Wait a second. There's money in this? There's like, you can get paid for this?"
How many years into casting was that for you? How old were you then? How old were you when you were casting TF2?
Like 18, I think. No, 19 maybe.
And that was during the time you were working at Tesco's when you started commentating TF2?
Like 1920, I think. Yeah, because it was around that time I played a lot. I played like competitive TF2 when did I start? My TF2 history is also quite short in comparison to like people like you and Josh.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, because Josh and I, and when we were doing this, when we were talking, I mean, we were both hyper obsessed with TF2, with trying to grow the scene. Like I felt like there was always kind of a duality between us, and that he was in Europe, I was in North America. We were kind of on the same wavelength of how to grow the game, grow the competitive streams, and try and push things forward, which obviously is, just was always a fruitless effort, but that did not stop us from pouring our souls into it. But yeah, were you ever into it in that way, or was that kind of just ended up being a vehicle to push your
I really like the game. I really like playing the game. I was awful at it. I was like horrible, because I didn't really have a semblance of how to improve at the game compared to like, I don't know, like compared to like Counter-Strike, whereas Counter-Strike or like any round-based game, you die, you have a good 30 seconds to reflect on what you did wrong. You know what I mean? In TF2, you can relentlessly feed on repeat, and you're like, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Like, I'm feeding off the respawn timers. Like, oh, we should be defending here. We're not. And so I was just really bad at TF2, even though I love the game just inherently. Like, I put in thousands of hours into it. And like, just me commentating was just because I saw it as a thing, and I was like, I wanted to do it. I thought I might be good at it, and then I just like jumped into it head first, and wasn't just like I thought like I would be good at it. It was also just like it was something cool to do. Yeah, and then but I wasn't really involved in TF2 that long. I mean, it was like 3 years, I think, essentially. So it was a very short stint. Like, I played for like a year, started casting. Like, I started casting my mid-division teams scrims on like the replay, like STV, just for fun. Reached out to old Turbo Tabs. Yep. Gotta love him.
This is the second time he's getting a shout out on this, but he deserves it.
He does deserve
it.
Reached out to old Turbo
And both
Tabs.
times I've said, that dude is jacked. That's my
He's
gym.
jacked now.
That
He's
is my
big.
gym inspiration.
He is a big man.
We can't help but bring up Turbo Tabs every time we talk about TF2.
And I said to him, can I cast some Team Fortress TV stuff? And he was like, sure. And then there's like plenty of opportunities to do it because it's all like volunteered based in TF2. But I wasn't like bleeding heart and soul for the scene. I was just doing it because it was like I enjoyed doing it. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I was just going to keep doing it as long as I was having fun and enjoying it, which I did for a very long time. And then it got to a point where like the casting. I remember it was like 2016. Overwatch got announced like 2015, I think. And obviously, like now we know that there's not. The only thing that's really taken from TF2 in terms of that is like it's a class-based shooter. Like when it comes to actual, like I guess the gameplay elements, I guess the high time to kill, maybe you can make that comparison, sure. But yes, inspiration was taken, but it's not the same game. But it looked cool at the time, and I was like, wow, it'd be really cool to just cast that as well, because the game looked really fun. And me and Josh, we didn't really know each other too well at that point. Me and old Sideshow Wilkinson. But we had worked together, I think, on like 2 events, and Josh was already diving head first, 2016 with journalism, with everything at that point. Me, I was still doing like TF2 stuff, but I was also like I got the casting itch for just anything I could get my hands on, and I also played a ton of Dota 2, and so I was casting a ton of Dota 2, like just open Dota 2 stuff.
That's the secret. Hidden
lore.
That people do not know that you were a Dota caster.
Yeah. I casted, apparently, I didn't even notice until I did a TI watch party this year, but one of the finalists of TI this year, I casted with him without realizing.
Because with him?
Yes. Yeah. I casted with Purge as well. Purge is like very prominent in the scene. And he, for some reason, still follows me on Twitter. I don't know why, because all I do is just shit post relentlessly as well. And I mean, still follows me, still responds to my tweets sometimes every now and then. Don't really know why, but yeah, Dota, that was like the hidden lore, because I'd also played a ton of Dota, and Dota is very easy to just get into casting because they have the replays, the STV files of any game you could want. Even live games that are ongoing, you can just turn off the commentary and just cast over it yourself, which I would just do for like the open stuff. And dude, I remember Moonduck Studio, I can't remember. It was like one of the competing studios for casting studios in Dota at the time, them versus Beyond the Summit. And they ran a horrible idea for content. They called it the Caster's Crucible. And did I ever tell you about this?
I don't think you told me about it, but it sounds familiar. Maybe you did. I can't. I'm struggling to remember.
Horrible idea. They were trying to source new casting talent in Dota.
Yeah.
And they decided to do it in a way where it was an open, like...
oh my God, you did
you can join.
Yep, I remember this, yes.
You join, and they had a live MMR system, and the chat could like write like plus MMR, minus MMR, and it would lower the MMR of the caster who was live casting. And if it got lowered below a certain point, like if the chat just didn't like somebody, they would get boosted off, and the next person would get thrown in live. And I mean, there are so many reasons not to do this. Mainly because just that is like a psychological experiment that you are committing onto various amateur commentators who don't have the charisma or professionality to understand, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't let the you know, like the thoughts and will of the masses affect my self-esteem in this regard. But I just went for I'm not kidding. I was just like, I don't know, I embodied the greatest casters of all time. They took over my body spiritually when I stepped into the ring, the Casters Crucible. And I remember like I reached like 9K MMR in the Casters Crucible. It was me and one other caster, I think it was Moxie at the time, and she's still casting Dota 2. She's still casting all the TIs and everything. And so we were like, I think the two standouts from that. But I just remember doing it, and it was brutal. Like, I was like doing so well, they wanted to fuck with me. So they brought in a co-caster who was also on the list, because I wasn't getting voted off. And the chat immediately voted him off after like a minute.
That is brutal.
Brutal, yes, yeah. But after that, I started talking to like Moondark around the same time as me starting to cast Overwatch stuff in 2016. So this was only like, I mean, this is the same year that I was really casting TF2 stuff quite a lot, I think. Because, I mean,
yeah, it was, because the infamous DreamHack 2016 was
that was my first ever LAN that I casted.
Yeah,
that never finished.
That's the infamous LAN. I definitely remember talking to Josh about that as well, because it is an iconic TF2 moment with one of the greatest of BO5 series of all time. Went to 4 maps and then ran out of time, and everyone in the TF2 community had to get kicked out of the building before the match, before the grand finals match could finish. What was going on in your brain in that moment? Because it was
I was
Josh
just going off.
Because I remember it was Josh
me,
who
Josh
came.
Cadus.
Yes, and it was Josh who came back though alone and just had to do an announcement to the stream.
Well, dude,
what was going on with you behind the scenes there?
I was along for the ride. I was already loving every moment of it, because it was like, oh, dude, this is awesome. Like we're like casting a DreamHack, and we're like, I don't care that we're like tucked in a corner in an expo hall working for a company that's probably money laundering in Hong Kong or something. I don't know. Like I didn't care for any of that. I just loved the fact that I was like traveling to Jönköping, Sweden, and casting TF2. And I remember doing the finals, and I'm just like, I'm casting, and I just see in the corner of my eye, I see Cadus and Josh just like looking all nervous. You can sense the body language of someone when they start tensing up. They're a little bit more anxious. They're a little bit nervous. Some bad news got delivered to them, but I was just still going off, and I'm like, I throw back to them a little bit like during the cast. And they're like really rigid with their commentary. And I'm like, oh, something's gone wrong here. Something's gone wrong. And then shortly afterwards, stepped away. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a bit of a situation. I can't remember the exact words.
That sounds pretty accurate.
Never had a situation like this before. And then, Josh going off about heavy fist fighting in the car park to settle who wins and flipping a coin or something. Yeah, the event that never finished with that one. But that was 2016. That was the summer of 2016. And then I did the winter DreamHack. I did I-59 or 58 even. And like around it was like 2017. It started 2017. I started to do like just anything I could get my hands on casting wise. I did CS:GO at 2016. 2016 DreamHack Winter, they needed a caster for a women's CSGO tournament.
Oh my God, I remember this.
And I casted that with just, dude, I mean, I casted with, they got a 1.6 pro who had not touched CSGO at all, and he was just like talking about his 1.6 days. He was very nice. He was like an older, mature dude. And I remember casting with it was just a 14-year-old kid or something. He was like super young. Yeah. I don't think he was 14. I think he was like 16 or 17. But he thought he was the bee's knees. He was like me in my first year of the Overwatch League, where there's just the ego just seeped in, I think, because he was like you don't really have the emotional development to really like process, like, oh, we're talking over video games. Like, it's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. And I just remember he was hogging a mic tremendously for the women's CSGO tournament. And I was just people talking based off my CSGO knowledge of just playing the game a lot, which I did play a ton.
Yeah, didn't you get to Global Elite by playing one map?
Yeah, Workout. The escort
just
map.
This niche map.
Over and over again, yeah.
That didn't get removed at some point as well.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, but we would stack on that map, and we were a well-drilled squad. We had unbelievable call-outs. There was the basketball court on the right side of the map, when you're looking out from the one side. And what the hell did we call that one? We called that one LeBron.
I mean, I remember playing on that map shortly.
Yeah, the escort map. But we had so many strats for that. And I got to global, but I was like just spamming a niche map that no one else knew how to play. So anybody can do that. People do that on Office, anybody. It doesn't really count. But I had knowledge to cast it, and I just pulled up the Liquipedia of just the players, and I would just start talking about the history at times and just start casting. But I just when I was casting with the kid, I was just letting him talk because he really liked the sound of his own voice, which is part of the course of a lot of people who get into esports broadcasting, is that, most of us are just egotistical maniacs. So
at that tournament, by any chance, were there any of the people from Valorant at that in CS? Would you even remember?
I would not have even remembered.
Yeah.
I mean,
so somebody can
probably look it up.
Crazy throwback if you were just casting.
Dude, that would be crazy.
Potter and whomever, then you just...
Yeah.
It's just a distant memory. Also, listen, I've heard so many tall tales from both you, Wilkinson, so many things. And I'm struggling at times to bring it all back. Didn't a young you also cast with Dust?
Yes. Yeah. Dude, okay, so... This is the deep lore. This was, I think, it's 2016 or 2015 maybe. I can't quite remember. But around the time of me working at Tesco's in my depression era, I was also trying to go back to school because I failed my education from 17 to like 18, basically. I didn't fail it. I did graduate, or like I didn't fail high school, but I didn't get very good grades at all. Not enough to really go to university. So I went back to school to do... specialize and do something that would actually allow me to go to university. And it was a computer programming course. And part of that, they took us to EGX Rezzed, which is an indie game festival in Birmingham that gets ran every year. And I had been to it before. I had like paid out of my own pocket to go to it because I've just always been an absolute fucking nerd. And so I've just loved games and gaming, and I would just pay to go to the indie stuff by myself and like go on the train to go to Birmingham to go to this festival. But the school, he wanted to run like a school trip to go to it. Our teacher of the class, and we went there, and we go there and we're like, whatever, seeing the sights. I remember me and all my classmates were like 4 years younger than me. They think I am hot shit because of just the age disparity of just me being almost a dropout, a failed high school student. But like they when you're a kid and you're just like,
oh my God. Yeah. I mean, if I take it, yeah, this was, I remember reflecting on this earlier in my life, like when I was getting into my like earlier 20s.
Yeah.
And just... Yes, some of the people that I was around that I thought were so cool in retrospect.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
And
seeing where some of those people, what the decisions they made later and who they became, like, okay, that's...
Yeah, I mean, a little
wish you
secret.
the best.
Like, wasn't that cool back then, but still, like, it's that aura of just being slightly older that just carries so much weight when you're at that age.
Yeah.
And I remember we were just going around, and they had a CSGO showcase, and the organizers were very clever because there was like, I think it was like 3 days of the event or 2 days of this convention. They were doing a CSGO showcase. I can't remember. I think it was iBuyPower that was running it, maybe. And they had a bunch of the casting talent, and they were using the first day for their rehearsal. And they were getting the audience to play on the PCs to do their tech checks. They didn't say this. They were getting the audience though to come up. They were like, get a chance to be casted by the casters, and you can even get a chance to cast with the casters.
So old esports.
Yep. And they were like, you can get a chance to cast with the casters if you really want to, because only one of them agreed to do the tech check rehearsal. It was Dos Murray who was up there. And I remember jumping up. I remember like speaking to one of them, like, oh, I actually like cast in my spare time. Like, I've never really done CS before, but like, yeah, can I jump up and try? And they were like, yes, yeah, no, nobody's volunteered. Yes, go. Like, nobody was volunteering for this. But it was just like people going up on stage and playing like maps and stuff. And I've realized now with hindsight, with the knowledge I have now, they were using that for their fucking tech check, for like their rehearsal the day before the tournament.
Oh, it is painfully old esports. Just penny
ingenious,
pinching anywhere you possibly could.
Yeah.
Which we're heading back to, by the way.
Yeah, we are heading back there. We're slipping back there.
But maybe never that far again. But listen, we'll give it a little bit of time. We'll see what happens.
And I remember casting with Dust. I remember going up there with Dust and being, oh, what's up, man? He's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, And I didn't tell Dust I had like casted TF2 quite a lot or like anything like that. And I think this is my first time casting a game other than TF2. And I get down there and I just start talking to Dust about it. And Dust was like, afterwards, he was like, man, you're actually really good. Like, he's like, I wasn't expecting that at all. You're actually really good. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I cast TF2. And he was like, oh man, that's cool. That's awesome. And he was like, oh, all right, cool. And then parted ways and went back on the bus of the school trip, back to the college. And yeah, so that was the one instance where I cast with Dust Murray and CS.
Spotted the talent early.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Shout out to Dust.
Yeah.
But
God damn.
Yeah, shout out to Dust. He gifted me that one sub that one time to win the weekly award.
Yeah, to win the weekly award.
Shout out to him.
God. Yeah.
So what was the path after that to when you got to the Overwatch League? When did you get to the point where you were either not offered a spot outright, but was there a period of time where you were under the impression that you could be in it? You were in contention for a spot?
After the 6-week stint in Colorado, which is basically just, I mean, the same stuff that I was talking about with going to Guildhall and spending and paying for someone's college education in terms of just buying drinks. We were doing that in Colorado, not to the same degree, but also there was just legal weed involved, having come from the UK. And so you bet your ass we were getting fucking high as a kite, like almost every other night. And like they had what was it? The grills outside the hotel, the long-term hotel. So we were just grilling up steaks and burgers every now and then, like once a weekend for the 6 weeks, and we would just get high or whatever. It was a great time. It was a really great time.
It is a miracle that you guys got hired. You and
it's all about vibes.
Josh, I know the vibe. Yeah, I mean
all about,
the vibes.
Are you pleasant to work with?
The vibes are fantastic, but it's just from, I guess, just thinking about the corporate mind and what they're seeking. Like, it's one thing for Puckett, who is going to be, around you guys to appreciate the positive, silly energy that is coming to the unit. But if you're a suit, like, this is just a nightmare.
At the same event over these 6 weeks, me and Josh had never had s'mores before. And I remember Monte Cristo was there, and he was like, you guys have never had s'mores before? All right, we have to do this. And we set up on the fire. I remember GB was there, Puckett was there, Matt Morella was there, Monty, Doa. They're all there, all these outstanding members of esports society, the giants of which, they're standing on the shoulders of prior giants who have built up this industry, and we are standing on their shoulders here and now. Josh paid me. He bet me, I think it was like $20 to snort the ashes of a burnt marshmallow. Of just a s'more from the fire that was burnt too much. And everyone was like, no, don't do that. And I was just like... just snorted these ashes because I couldn't say no to just the attention, just the opportunity to be a class clown. I just couldn't turn it down. And Josh was dying. Puckett also dying. Everyone else, Matt Morello also dying. Everyone else sternly disappointed. Goldenboy just being like, oh,
GB, just the disappointed father.
GB was like, oh, come on. Like, I remember it so distinctly. But yeah, I mean, there's a lesson to be learned in this, is that you just have to be pleasant to work with.
Yeah.
You just have to be pleasant to work with.
It's a great statement after that story.
I was, personally, reflecting on this, I was a very obnoxious individual to be around at that point. Because, again, it's starting to, like, roll around in terms of, the ego seeping in, getting hired for stuff that gets, that just comes with, I think, a position of, it's not really like a position of power. It's like you're in like the limelight, I guess, in your sphere, in your tiny sphere, but you don't know it at the time. You're getting all this attention and just a modicum of quote unquote fame. And it's very easy to let that go to your head when you're a young adult. Like I was 20, I think I was 22, maybe 21 at the time. So it's like, I always think that men go through like their emotional development in like almost 2 or 3 stages. And it takes like the 21 to 23 to go through that final hurdle sometimes where you're just like, you get over it and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing these things,
Yeah, at least like the most
Or it shouldn't be acting like
rudimentary things.
Yeah.
There's definitely hurdles past that. But that was, I remember having that very earlier than you, when I was having that in TF2, when I was streaming very early on.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty early to Twitch, where because Twitch John, who's no longer with the company, but was one of the like OGs of the platform, loved TF2 and just gave everybody partner.
He did, yeah.
That's literally why I still had partner on my account. But he gave me partner all the way back then. And I was streaming a lot at the end of 2013 and like early 2014, I want to say. I think it was around then. And because at the time previous to that, I was making TF2 YouTube videos and I was collaborating with Star and Germa, I was getting pretty good viewership. I mean, especially for the time, I was getting like 400 or 500 viewers, and
yeah, it's very good.
That
for the time.
In tandem with the 2 years that I just spent playing 8 hours minimum every single day to try and be as good as possible. That was like the maxed out ego time of my life. And then I remember at some point just getting, getting so much blowback and just getting ridiculed and shit on by the community and like a lot of the people. Also, the TF2 community was just ruthless. Genuinely, this with that amount of viewers I was getting compared to what I've done now in Valorant, I received more harassment back then than I've done in all of Valorant, which is crazy if you think about the difference in exposure, viewership, everything. But that was one of the reasons that, I realized then that I like could not handle that and stopped streaming. But also then that spurred on like years later from that, where it was like super, maybe even honestly too far of the opposite extreme, of just being, I don't know, beyond humble into I know exactly what you mean. Like I went way too far in the other direction.
So far removed from the ego-driven that you're lacking confidence sometimes in things that you do. Yeah,
yes,
I definitely
absolutely.
went through that.
And so I just went too far in the other direction and then, kind of rebalanced back. Did you ever try or want to be a full-time streamer? Or do you ever still think about that now?
I like streaming just as a hobby right now. Like, I like the fact that I have a job that's supplementary to streaming, and I can stream with no pressure of like getting subs or like it needs to make money, otherwise I am going to starve. Like I like the fact that it is just it's my thing that I do on the side that I just do for fun, because not a lot of people have that luxury, and it also means that I just bring my own vibe to streaming. I don't have to try and put on the mask and don on the internet persona where I'm screaming over Fortnite moments to make a buck. It's like I can just stream Duolingo practicing Korean to 50 viewers and not feel like, I'm like, I'm wasting an opportunity. I should be playing Valorant right now. Like, I just do whatever I want, and it's better that way. It's a healthier balance and dynamic. So, yeah, I don't really. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like if it provided me the means to survive, maybe, sure. But I also get a ton of fulfillment out of commentary, especially right now. I feel like I've never been better in terms of my like personal level in commentary, and also just my understanding of the space that I'm in. Like I've gone through so much emotional development just through both therapy and life events and everything else that I've gone through, that I'm now at a point where I feel like I'm at a really central point of maturity, and I've still got more to go. Like I think there's a realization in that you never stop learning, you never stop growing as a person, right? And accepting that. But yeah, I feel like I'm in a really, really good place right now with commentary that I don't know. I'm gonna keep trying to do it as long as I can, or as long as I think that I'll always put the energy in to warrant it. Because that's one of my mantras that I've kind of come to the conclusion of over the last few years, which is commentary isn't about the person casting. Like a lot of people get into commentary, like myself included, I think to a degree, like with TF2, it's because like we like the limelight and the attention, and we like the possibility of there being a Twitch clip with our voice over it, and we're screaming about the play, and it's really awesome, and it's cool when that happens. But there's so much more that goes into commentary than just you as an individual commentating it. It is your entire purpose. Essentially, our purpose should be always to elevate the players and teams and tell the stories correctly, to really elevate those moments. That should always be the goal. And so I've had that kind of realization over these last few years, especially on my way out from the Overwatch League. And when I got the opportunity to do Valorant, I really took it as like almost a second lease of this, not of life, but of this, this career. Because not a lot of people get that opportunity. A lot of people kind of just peter out of existence from one game. Like once their dominant game goes out, they don't really do another game. They don't get that chance or opportunity. So I've really, I've kind of like, I don't know, just built up that mantra in my mind of it's players and teams first. And that is my focus for commentary. It's not about the clip. It's not about, the fancy wordplay necessarily, even though that's one of the things I think that I'm currently lacking with my commentary. And if I obtain that, it's fucking over. It's Jova for everyone. Like I'm just saying, that's a little bit of the ego creeping back in. It's a little bit of the ego creeping back in, but
just a little bit.
I think I'm in a good place with all of that, and that kind of understanding that it should always be the players and teams first.
Yeah.
And if it's not that, then I don't think the commentary will ever be as good. If you're only focused on just it trying to be, rewarding just for yourself. And for your own personal, maybe selfish reasons.
Yeah, now, okay, you did remind me of something that I have here that I've pulled up. Okay, that I want you to address when you're speaking about a little bit of the ego there. Okay. Now, in May of this year, 2023, you had this to say. Dudes be like climbing the mountain, achieving perfection, my ultimate form. Let all doubters be silenced through my prowess. You work in esports, it's not that serious. 2 skull emojis, and then a man pointing emoji? I don't really, it's hard to tell what.
I don't know what it was.
I don't know why you posted that one, but.
I already know where this is getting pulled
then, let me just pull this one up. And then 2 months later, merely 2 months later, and actually on the very same day, but 2 months later, you then said, you never stop learning. Every event I reflect and improve upon the cast, despite being in the best form I've ever been in. I have no intention of slowing down. I'm doing this shit until I die or I'm pushed out, and it won't be from slipping. What in the fuck happened?
What in the Sigma grind?
What is this trillionaire motivation post that you made? Okay. What happened from May to June?
I'll tell you.
Or July.
What we just discussed about going completely in the other direction of like, you're going humble to the point where you lack confidence in yourself and everything you're doing. I realized that was negatively affecting my commentary. Like, when did I write that to? It was like at the end of July of this year?
The second one was at the end of July. Or beginning of July.
Of last year?
This year. Both were this year.
Yeah. So
I think that was just after LCQ, maybe?
That would have been around LCQ or maybe just after Tokyo, I think. But I know exactly what happened in my life to come to those conclusions and also to have such adverse and wild 180s in terms of just me writing that. Because one was me reflecting on my surroundings and my peers, and some people do like to dabble in the old Sigma grind set, like either you put in the work or you get out, like that kind of stuff. And I just found it quite humorous kind of reflecting on it because I feel like a lot of it is just almost, it's their own self-interest at heart when they write stuff like that. Like they just want to appear like they are working really hard and everything else. It doesn't really feel like it's coming from a good place necessarily. But I remember around that time, I was in the point where I didn't really, it wasn't that I was lacking confidence in my commentary, but I was so focused on telling the right stories to the players. Like I would put in so much preparation into making sure that I was doing the best job possible to elevate the players in the teams. And like, that was my sole focus. And I was like almost just taking a step back on my own commentary. And I realized that was one of the major things that I was kind of missing was just, sometimes you just need a little bit of the injection of the ego. You just need it because of what it carries with it is confidence. You don't need it to such a toxic degree that you'll completely overshadow the players and teams, but you need a little bit so that you actually have the confidence to feel like, hey, I'm actually that guy. I can go out there in front of thousands of people and I can, cast this and do it justice. Because I realized from like the beginning of that year up until probably around heading into Tokyo, maybe just before Tokyo, I was so down on myself when I would mess up on casts. And like I would pick up when I was casting live on mistakes I would make, and I would beat myself up mentally in the moment to such a degree that it would immediately add in hesitation into my casting. And I would hesitate just like calling a line, and I would hesitate saying this, and I would constantly be like triple checking in my mind before I said something. And I realized that, you know, it was derived, I think, from just trying to be a perfectionist and trying to just do the best job possible for the players, for the team. And I didn't have confidence in myself to be able to do that, because I just felt like, well, I'm just nothing. Like I should only be, you know, a backlight to the grand scheme of things, which is, you know, the competition, the players, the teams. And then after a lot of VOD reviewing, reflecting, and I do a lot of VOD reviews of other games. I do a lot of VOD reviews of my own, like on top of like the prep for the work. I must have watched, I think I calculated, like, since I got into Valorant, easily 1,000 hours plus of VODs, like easily. Just combined from like analyzing, watching games, and watching my own cast back. And I realized that, yeah, part of the real downturn of my commentary and where it was starting to go, you know, not wrong, but just where I was really missing compared to what I had when I was younger, was that confidence that comes from the ignorance of youth. Where I'm not, like, and that sounds like a fancy way to say it, it's basically just like when you're too stupid to realize that you're doing stuff wrong and you think you're the bee's knees. And I realized that that's what I had when I was younger, but with it comes a certain level of swagger with your craft that I didn't have at that time. And I realized that so instead of actually going all the way back to that, I feel like I've reached a middle ground, which is, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to just fuck up in a moment. Like of a cast, it doesn't detract from the whole thing. Don't let it take away.
Dick.
Yeah, incredible dick. Like I remember screaming that at Copenhagen.
That was at Copenhagen. You just accidentally stumbled your words, and
yep, incredible
the grand
dick.
final said that.
It was a great
Listen,
moment.
it happens.
But it happens, and you mess up sometimes. You can't beat yourself up, and so I've stepped away from that, and I've just accepted that there will never be such a thing as a flawless cast. Yeah. You'll always mess up with anything you do, and you just have to learn from it retroactively, not in the moment. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, and it's also just reflecting on the fact that I'm really quite pleased with just my progress that I made, and that's why I made that in the moment, because I was just like, I think I was just coming off like the high of working an event, maybe Tokyo, maybe it was like LCQ or something. I'm not sure.
Sure, it was LCQ.
Yeah,
at that time.
But I was feeling like I was at the top of the world, like in terms of my own personal development and growth. I felt like I've never been in a better place, and it was a really good feeling. And I was watching my cast back, and I was like, great meeting, no notes. I was like, I remember taking notes of like all the wrongdoings on some days, and I'm like, wow, the only thing I could add into this cast is like better wordplay, like being more creative, like throwing in metaphors, analogies regarding like the descriptions of what teams are doing, players are doing, just to make it more colorful and creative. And that was the element that I was missing. And that's a very good problem to have, because that stuff is, you know, that means you're doing everything else theoretically well, which I feel like, me and Josh really hit our stride this year, like massively. But that's where the 180 came from. So
right, because well, kind of off of that and the having to regain that confidence. I guess this is an assumption, but you spent so much time in the Overwatch League. I can imagine you just established a level of comfort and confidence in what you were doing there, both on the desk and then commentating with Josh. But when you did eventually start getting gigs in Valorant, they just threw you to the wolves. I mean, you did Reykjavik, and then they extended your stay.
Yeah.
The next tournament you were doing the finals. Do you think you just got pushed way too fast, and that led to, you know,
no, because
place where you could stumble?
Because me and Josh had been, we'd all been co-streaming up until that point, and so the entire time I was listening to the co-streams, and I wasn't just watching the games and watching the teams, and you know, we were analyzing or whatever. But I can't help but, when I listen to commentary, I can't help but dissect it and pick apart what I like, what I don't like, whenever I'm listening to any commentary. So when I do VOD reviews, I have to listen to foreign language casts, because otherwise I just end up like getting distracted by the commentary and like picking out things I like and don't like, and it throws me off most of the time. So the entire lead up to us working at Valorant event, it was the perfect storm of me not wanting to let the opportunity slip, because I recognize I have been granted a second chance to actually make it in esports. Not a lot of people get that chance. The Overwatch League didn't reach out to me and Josh again. We got ghosted after a couple of weeks after we turned down the initial like really bad offer that we got given. That was back in, that was heading into 2022. And there was no guarantees as to whether or not we were going to get work anywhere else, right? So us getting that chance, I really took that as like, okay, we are going to show up and we're gonna work hard. And we VOD reviewed a lot, we practiced a lot with our casting, and we really honed our Valorant very quickly. Like as soon as we started getting reps, we really honed that to such a degree, because we also, from just listening all the time, I don't know about Josh, but me definitely, I could pick apart the stuff that was missing from cast. I was like, oh, I'm like, they need to be weaving this story right here. Like this is a perfect downturn moment where nothing's happening in a round and they haven't been talking about this one storyline hit that we have been talking about the entire time on the couch. They need to be weaving this right now. And it was like, just, I think a year of that was we just came in, and it was like, it was the perfect environment, a perfect storm to just hit the ground running immediately as soon as we got that chance, which we did. We really did. Yeah, they liked our work so much that they extended our stay at Reykjavik. And that came with a whole load of other troubles at Reykjavik, because I think they miscommunicated to other talent at the time, and just assumed that me and Josh had come in and were the puppeteers, the Shadow Council puppeteers, and we had like pushed people off games to get it. So very early on in Valorant, we were enemies of some of the talent members because of that instance at Reykjavik and our stay getting extended. But it's all been cleared up now after we explained it. Hey, no, actually, corporations are really bad at communication, and we're not actually pulling the strings. We don't control John Riot. So,
did you feel ready then when you got to Copenhagen for doing the finals, or do you think that was too early, or do you think that was, because that's a big tournament? Big moment. I mean, did you guys do any finals in Overwatch League?
Yeah, we did a lot of the finals for the other tournaments. We never did a grand finals.
But right.
And we had done crowd work before in the form of like big desk events. So like the Barclays Arena in 2018 for the Overwatch League. I mean, I think we had like a stupid capacity arena. The Barclays Center, the Barclays Arena, whatever it's called in New York. I mean, I can't remember the numbers, but it was massive. We packed that out. And so I was no stranger to doing it, but we never did commentary. All of our commentary and casting was, in terms of crowd work, it was in TF2. It was never in Overwatch. So that was very new to us, and I think they gave it to us under the impression that we did have that reps and experience, which we did to a degree, but not in commentary. So it was very new to us, and there was a lot of learning moments walking away from that grand finals, like many learning moments, which there's never not learning moments, to be honest, in the line of work. But I didn't walk away from that feeling particularly proud or pleased with what we pulled off there. But in terms of did we feel ready for it? Not really. I just at that point, I just took it in stride, as in like, how it worked in the Overwatch League was we would alternate like the pairs. They would give different pairs the grand finals of this tournament, and it was spread out, not relatively equally, but they would spread it out. And me and Josh, I felt like we were like the second strongest pair in the Overwatch League when we were casting. And so, yeah, it's only natural that, we would do some of the other finals and everything else. And I felt kind of the same about us in Valorant. I felt like we were one of the strongest pairs in Valorant. It's only natural that we would cast the grand finals. It didn't matter that we had just jumped into the scene, because we'd been following it for, the entirety of it since it came out, basically. So yeah, but I definitely walked away from that with a lot of learning moments. I didn't jump into it feeling not ready, but it was, I wasn't shocked either that we had got the chance, because it was so normal to me to have that environment of just like, well, it doesn't matter like if you do the finals. I don't really view the finals ever as a merit-based thing that you earn, because more often than not, there's other factors that come into it to decide who casts a grand finals. It can be just like personal preference of people who are deciding the schedule. It can be this, that, or the other. I've witnessed many times in the past people do grand finals that didn't deserve it, or not just in Valorant. I'm talking other games when I've watched other commentary, it just happens sometimes. You can't really attach your self-worth to doing a big game, which a lot of people do. In esports commentary not for some reason. It's not like I don't understand why, because there's no other metrics to really measure your success as a caster and your improvements. But I personally don't really believe in it being a showcase of like who deserves it the most. It's just if you're really good, chances are you will eventually get the chance to do a grand finals, because it just gets passed around. Sometimes the best people don't do it. Sometimes the best people do. It just happens like that.
Yeah, and then you did another one, but that was not of your own
Oh God.
volition. That was of circumstances in which it was Pansy was ill, couldn't do the finals. It was supposed
Pansy
to be
got COVID, I think.
Right, it was supposed to be Pansy and Hypoc doing the finals of
Sao Paulo.
Yeah, Brazil, the first big tournament of this year, the first tournament of the franchise league, every team there. And then you guys got thrown into the finals last second. What was the takeaway from that? How was, or rather, let me rephrase. What was the takeaway from that initially? What was your reaction when it was done the days after? And then how do you think about it now?
Initially, it was just, I mean, we really had no time to think. That entire event, we were so overworked. We had worked almost like every single day at that event, and it was one of the longest events that we've had in Valorant. And so we were just, I mean, I don't know about Josh, but I was exhausted because I didn't slow down once. Like in terms of preparation, every morning I would prep, watching the VODs, either of the teams or myself, my own commentary, writing notes, improvements. And so it was a grueling marathon. And I put everything out there for the upper finals, lower finals. I can't remember which one we did. I mean, it was a single elim tournament. So they were both just of the same level. But whatever match we did, I put everything out there, all my energy, everything. My voice was shot by the end of it. And I felt, that's it. I can rest. I can sleep. I can rest. I can just enjoy the finals. I remember literally talking to Anna Donlan in the audience, watching, I think, the upper finals or something, like the other match, well, not the upper finals, but the other match that was also aligned to decide a team that went to the finals. And I was talking about my same, like, mantra and methodology when it comes to casting and how I don't attach my self-worth to doing a finals event. And she was like, oh, that sounds quite healthy. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's good because, you know, it's better to find other ways to try and ascertain your self-worth in commentary. And then next thing I know, I wake up and it was like all hands on deck. It was like, Pansy's out sick. It's a hard decision to call, but Josh and Bren, you're in. Like, you're doing it. And so I woke up late, didn't have ample opportunity to prep. My voice wasn't rested. I was exhausted already. Obviously, we knew the teams, but that combined with the fact that it was an absolute banger of a match, we were just thrown into it. And I didn't get to do the usual preparation where, you know, I fixed some of the mistakes of the previous cast. Normally, with my final cast done, I just like, I do it maybe before the next time I'm casting. I don't do it straight afterwards. At that point, I am like spent. I'm exhausted. I'm just there to enjoy whatever happens on the finals. But yeah, we we were thrown into that, and I felt like I'm not particularly proud of that finals either, but it's for understandable reasons because we weren't prepped for it, and I felt like I could have given it my all if I was properly, adequately prepared for it, and I knew well in advance that I was doing it, because I would have paced myself with the prior game. But when I got done, I was like, man, we popped off, to be honest. Like I think both me and Josh felt like we gave the extra bit of energy that we didn't know we had left at the end of that event to try and deliver the storylines at that moment and deliver the big moments. I didn't know if my voice was going to make it. By like map 3, my voice was going and gone. And I just remember at the end of it, I was so exhausted. I was like, okay, well, it's done. It's finished. It's all out there. It's all on the table. The reaction from people, because I don't know if it was just because it was the first big Valorant event of the year, but it gained the ire and attention. I was just scrolling through social media. I never really try to ever seek out like criticism or feedback on casting, but literally on the For You page of Twitter, I see like some CSGO influencer talking about the grand finals and how bad the casting was for it right afterwards. And I was just like chewed up because I knew it wasn't the best that we could have done. And I knew it wasn't. I just knew it wasn't. Absolutely. Why? But because of the circumstances. But they don't know that. And for a lot of people, their reflection of our casting, I just hated the idea of walking away from that and people thinking that the match wasn't done justice, because it was an unbelievable storyline. Like in the entire time for lock-in, it was a fantastic match. So I absolutely hated it, and I tore myself up. And I've reviewed that grand final so many times, and there were so many mistakes, so many learning moments to fix from all of it for both me and Josh, which, you know, it's a lesson learned. So there's no such thing as a bad mistake if you can learn from it, which which we did. We've learned from that. But yeah, that chewed me up so much, and it really knocked my confidence, which is part of what I was saying just earlier, which was, you know, having no confidence really at all. When I was carrying, I would really beat myself up over mistakes until I had that realization at the midway point of, you know, actually don't beat yourself up. Like you're doing great, kid. You know, just hang in there. It's okay to mess up. So, but yeah, I really beat myself over that. I think, yeah, if we ever do a grand finals in the future, like the learning moments from that, it would be, I just know we would knock it out of the park so much better than we ever have, either for Copenhagen or Sao Paulo. Just a given. We've learned so much since then. It's just, yeah, it's the natural progression of things. And I know we put in the work I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. Like we genuinely do put in so much work to try and improve and try and really do a good job. So,
yeah. I mean, you had said, and I wanted to ask that about Copenhagen, reflecting back on that, several things you learned from that grand final.
Yeah.
And then also the Brazil grand final. What were the key takeaways, learnings from those two moments?
For Copenhagen, it was pacing during best of fives. So like best of five matches, making sure to really pace the commentary, because you don't want to go out guns blazing off the rip. Think of it as like almost the comparison of when people are listening. If you're screaming all the time, it just becomes white noise. And the hype moments are never elevated, because what people listening at home are comparing it to is just you screaming more and being hype. So whilst people really like hype casting in those small moments and clips, for an entire match, it really gets old. And so I think at Copenhagen back then, because I was so amped to be doing the finals, I came out with a lot of energy, and it was very hard to gradually ramp it up so that the last map actually meant something. And another really big mistake that I made on the Copenhagen Grand Finals is not watching out for the winning moment. Like just not keeping an eye on, hey, we're in round 12. If this scenario happens right now, this team is about to win. It's going to go to the winning shot. Not keeping that at the back of my head when I'm thinking about rounds. And I learned that in the worst way possible, because the round that won Copenhagen was the Sugetsu 4K on Breeze.
I remember Josh said the same thing when we talked about it. Yeah, just that ending moment suddenly just
straight away.
Lightning bolt just crashed down, and it was just over out of nowhere with a
and I was not ready for it.
Yeah.
Did not do the moment justice at all. I was not ready for it. So that was a massive, massive learning moment, because I mean, how could you not? And for Sao Paulo, I mean, there was a lot of mistakes, a lot of little mistakes, a lot of moments. Josh also had a very similar moment in Sao Paulo with the lock-in finals, because I was losing my voice. I let Josh take the last round, the final round. And if you watch it back, you'll listen. And he's like talking over. He's like, he's absolute Yapatron 3000. He's waffling over like the winning moment as it happens. And he's not really setting it up for a big crescendo, the big climax of the entire moment. So he did the same thing that I did at Copenhagen, which was just like not being ready for that winning moment, which you just have to be ready for. And so it was a massive learning moment for both of us in those events, in those matches, side by side. But Sao Paulo, I try not to beat myself up too much from it, but I learned a ton of stuff, just overall, that I have been slowly correcting, to the point where I, like, putting it out right now, I don't know if I would be able to do it as much. I mean, it's just little things I've just been tweaking over time. Just really little things that I've just been slowly tweaking and tweaking. Stuff like telling stories at the right time, making sure to point out important moments, like making sure our knowledge is really up to scratch, so that, you know, when I say something, Josh doesn't then have to then go off on a tangent talking about a thing when it's not applicable or relevant to the match at hand or the round at hand, or, you know, or just ensuring my knowledge is up to scratch so that I can always talk about something that will set Josh up for the most important thing in a round, you know, rather than him having to constantly talk about what I'm talking, which is really important. And it's just lots of little things that just been tweaking. But yeah, some big moments from the best of fives that we learned. But like I said, you know, there's no such thing as a bad mistake as long as you can learn from it. So
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that is true. And so with the grand final thing, I know you're saying that's, you know, not a metric to judge yourself by, but with those in mind, is there a part of you that desires getting another shot just to cement that not even just, not even necessarily an ego thing or to prove to
Just
other
chance,
people, or just to confirm even within yourself, just being
not
able
really.
to do it, or
No, I mean, I think whatever match I will get, I will do my best, and my best currently is, or like even just the baseline level of which I'm performing at is at a really good level. Yeah, I don't, not to say I wouldn't respect and put in a ton of work if I got the grand finals of anything. That's not what I'm saying when I describe this state of mind. It's mainly just ensuring that always that my self-worth that I derive from commentary doesn't come from getting the big event, because I know that sometimes it's just circumstances out of your control. Sometimes you'll miss out on it because you get sick. Like sometimes you'll miss out on it because, I don't know, like they thought the casting of somebody, like another pair, was better at the prior event. And that's what they were basing it on. Maybe the decision was made long ago. I know if that's happened in Overwatch and other games, like it happens sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I would definitely give it my all, and I know I would do better. I just know that for a fact. Like I just have the utmost confidence that I'm currently at the peak of my own ability, and I've still got more to learn. I can still do even better, which is really exciting. I mean, it's not even, I don't think, egotistical to say, but it's really nice to be able to work on something and know that you have more to give and more to improve. It's very exciting. It's like it's cool to learn new stuff, and stagnation is very real in commentary. I think a lot of people trend like and tend to stagnate with their craft just because they don't really know the right ways to improve. It's very hard. There's not really too many resources out there. It's not like you can go to a school for esports commentary, or like there's even people who have been in the industry for decades, like with sports commentary. So yeah.
Yeah, on the not stagnating, and on before you talking about VOD reviewing other games, taking stuff from other games, I know something that you've said you thought about a lot is, and it makes sense, because constantly Valorant and CSGO are being compared for the very obvious plain view reasons. What things do you try to take from CS that you think are valuable for Valorant? And also, how do you break down the similarities and differences, and does it even matter? Is it even a conversation worth having?
Yeah, I think it is. I listen to a lot of CS commentary because it is like the closest thing that you can compare to that's not Valorant but is close to it, right? And one of the things that I really like about CS commentary that I think is very hard to replicate in Valorant without missing a lot of the crucial elements of like just telling a good cast in Valorant, is just, I'm so jealous of the blasé attitude, almost like laid back confidence that a lot of CS casting has, where it's like either a cheeky back and forth where they have the time to do so, and really just like banter. Because in CS, or at least it did when it was first 16, you had a lot of useless rounds where it was just, you had a lot of time to just talk and waffle, and you could just vibe with your co-caster. In Valorant, you are from the get-go explaining concepts. Like a comp can drastically change how you even commentate a map. Like I've used this example before, but for example, when in the era and time of when, like on Haven, teams were fighting so heavily for A lobby control, when the barriers are down, you have to start going immediately and start talking. And there's so many elements, like with compositional changes, with team comp changes, with little elements that change from teams from map to map and how they play a map, like based on your prior preparation. There are so many things to break down in a cast, and the fact that it's first to 13 compared to what CS was, which is 16, and we have less round time. I think there's 10 less seconds in Valorant means you have a lot less time to work with. There's just not. You have way more substance and nuance to fit in inherently, just because the game is more complicated compared to Counter-Strike, which has, listen, I'm not saying Counter-Strike lacks complexity. It definitely has it, but the tools of which that complexity is like comprised of is like 4 pieces of utility that hasn't changed since fucking 2 decades ago. Like it, and it's the same maps being played. So like it is really just drilled in CS, and they're allowed that luxury of being a bit more free flowing and bantering. And I think if you try to do that in Valorant, you could get away with it to a degree, but you'd start missing like really just the breakdowns of like how this comp is really cool and what this team is doing with it, what they're doing differently from this time, what they're doing to counter out what this team is doing. Because when you throw in the utility, the agents, the maps, the ultimates, everything all together, along with just the absolute complexity of the gunplay and the economy, it all it all just gets a little bit too much to try and have that carefree attitude. So that's what I'm jealous of with CS commentary now. Yeah, I haven't really listened to since they moved to like the 1st to 13, like any commentary. But I do wonder if if that's something that they also have had to adjust to in terms of their commentary style and like having to actually have less time for that. But in Valorant, it's very hard to have that level. But that is one thing that CS does well. And I think that when people make those comparisons of Counter-Strike versus Valorant, and they're like, Counter-Strike commentators are so much better, I think some of that derives from the fact that they are just so, it just feels like they are in complete control of the cast at every given moment. They're never losing track of something. There's never really any hesitancy. It's a laid-back level of confidence that comes from just repeated reps and not having too much change in terms of just being thrown at you with the meta and comps and everything else. In Valorant, it's like almost every single tournament, something's changing to such a massive degree. Either a new patch or a new map being introduced or a new agent. Like the variables are constantly shifting, which makes it very hard to achieve that feel, that same feel, which I think is where people derive that comparison from, at least from when I've really knuckled down and studied CS casting and Valorant casting to see what those kind of differences are. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a ton of Valorant casts, but even within a lot of practice casts that I've done with Mimi and maybe like, I don't know. I don't even know how many maps. Maybe 20 maps that I cast with Mimi this year. That might even be more than I actually have. I don't know. Somewhere around there, though. I've definitely noticed a very similar thing. There's no real... The most downtime that I feel like occurs is when there's like a timeout called, or when there's a real pure eco, but then that's reserved that's when you can tell the story.
Yes.
Because other than that, all of the other rounds, there's just way too much going on. There's so many interesting things happening in the game at all times that individuals can be doing that are very key to what's occurring, that it's like the most you can draw out of it is finding time to get the story in at the downtime. And then at that point, once you've gotten it out there, you've pretty much run the clock down to 0 and you're right back to the important stuff. But yeah, I also, when you're talking about though with CS commentary and the laid back attitude, the ability to banter, all of that, that was something that you and Josh were definitely known for in the Overwatch League. They, you were the king the kings of the toilet bowl games. Just every time there was a terrible game,
people would beg for us to be on the awful games because we would make them entertaining just by bantering back and forth. That hasn't really bled in, I don't think, that much in Valorant, because since then I've completely shifted my approach to commentary to such a degree where I'm really prep heavy now. Whereas in Overwatch, I was just kind of I show up and Josh will do the color commentary and I'll do my thing. And that wasn't very good. It was at quite a low level, actually, in hindsight, just thinking back to it. But we don't really do that much. But I think it's partly because there is no space for it, but also I put so much more focus now on just trying to get my game sense up to the same level as Josh. The way I see it is with play-by-play is you need to have as much knowledge as your color caster. You can't, it's not the role where you can just leave the color casting and analysis to your co-caster to just handle all of that. You need to know the right things to say. You need to know the right topics to bring up. Otherwise, you're going to lead your caster down the wrong path, and the entire time they're going to be screaming in their heads why the fuck have you said this? Now I have to talk about this to not make you to make you save face and go down this path and say this. You as a play-by-play caster, you need to know your stuff. Well, either that or you just completely lean and rely on them and ask them a ton of questions, which is also very valid. But I think that you need to know the game to a very high level, just so you don't put your foot in your mouth with where you lead the round in terms of conversation topics and where you set up topics and where you set up moments. Because, like I said, there's just no time in a round. It's so compact and condensed in Valorant from start to finish. Yeah.
I remember you saying to me as well, just in conversation, that one of the things you were trying to avoid with moving into Valorant was not being typecast as the funny guys or the funny duo, because more so from the suits and the way that they look at it, they're just these are the funny guys. We can't. That's not the finals tier prestige duo that you're looking for with when Uber's gonna deliver, you know, the fucking Gunna meme hand on fire bar to end out the grand finals that he's cooked up, like that. They want that, and they just don't have that same perception of you. So like, how much was that, or like even now when you're kind of reflecting back, thinking about your time in Overwatch League with that in mind, and then carrying that over into Valorant, was that a real conscious decision?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Because not to say that like Mitch and Matt didn't deserve every grand finals that they ever casted, because they did. Like they absolutely did earn it. But I tell you who also deserved the grand finals in Overwatch that like never really got the proper grand finals, it was Josh, my co-caster. Like Josh was excellency all throughout his entire tenure in Overwatch. He's been excellent all throughout Valorant as well. But I never really, personally, I don't think my level was ever up to scratch to cast the grand finals. Maybe at the time I would have said differently, but reflecting on it now, I now know, like, no, I wasn't really putting in the work to improve. There was an overarching sense of apathy with my involvement with the Overwatch League in the latter years because of how, like, poorly I felt like I was being treated by like them in terms of like negotiating and, you know, what they deemed as my worth to the product. So I just had a very, very like almost hands-off approach for a lot of time. But yeah, 100%. I didn't want to go into this being like the humorous guys, because I knew for a fact that they would throw us into matches that weren't very good because they knew that we were entertaining and they knew that we could like, you know, people liked watching us, and especially like watching us cast those kind of matches because we were funny and entertaining. And then we would get typecast in that way where people would say, oh, well, you know, I'm glad Match and Mitch are doing the finals because like, well, Josh and Bren are never serious. But that's just not true. Like every time we did the finals in Overwatch, we would always ramp it up in terms of the seriousness and just telling the right stories and trying to really elevate those moments. And we'd throw the funny guy routine. Listen, we wouldn't be tanking out there on the stage. We wouldn't even be telling jokes. We would just be really focusing on the game.
He's tanking.
He's tanking.
I mean, maybe we'll get into that one later. I just can't help myself but bring that up. But you know, keep going.
Yeah, and so Valorant, I definitely didn't want that, and I knew the way. I just know the way that the people who make decisions in terms of who does what games and who does this event, I just know the way they work. They work off of reading Reddit comments. Like, guess what, people at home? You have an immense amount of power over every commentator's job by writing positive feedback, because I tell you, the amount of bosses that I have had said, like just straight up said to me, verbatim, just a comment on Reddit that I had just read earlier by scrolling through like a post-match thread when I've been reading the scorelines or something. Ludicrous. It's ludicrous. But I can't blame them for that. They're not trained in broadcast commentary. They don't discern and decide. They can't really tell for themselves why someone's good at their job in terms of commentary. They just know that someone's good, but they don't know why. And so they default a lot to public perception, I think, to make a lot of decisions. I think that's just a natural way of things. So yeah, you the people at home, you have a tremendous amount of power. Do with that what you will. You know, try not to get anyone fired. Maybe try to gas people up more. You know, if anything, you're going to do that. Not just me. Do it to people you like. You know, because people, they're listening, they're watching, they're reading the comments when they probably shouldn't be, but they are. So
it is a fact of life.
Yeah,
that is occurring. Yeah, I mean, because at the beginning of Valorant as well, that was, I mean, so we were doing Plat Chat Valorant. That started when we were in the cursed COVID house.
I call it the depression house.
I mean, that was...
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think I know the answer, but what was worse? Fighting off the ecosystem that had grown in your apartment, or the 6 depressed men versus millions of ants?
The 6 depressed men versus millions of ants.
10-month period.
Yes, over 10 months. That 100% was one of the worst experiences of my life. Like, to this day, I have such an averse reaction to seeing an ant.
I do too. I truly do too. I
go nuclear.
Fight or flight.
I go nuclear. I go on a cleaning spree. I stop anything I'm doing if I see a semblance of an ant colony, and I begin to go on a wide radius. I eradicate the ecosystem. Like if anything in the food chain relied on those ants, it no longer exists within my area, within my sphere of influence. It no longer exists, because now after that we had like a year of just, obviously, the depressing circumstances of like the pandemic weighing all of us down, like the circumstances of packing a bunch of guys into this house that barely works.
Barely functioning home. But also, I mean, I remember going into that year. So that was, for me, that was the year where I could not work at the job I was at anymore. I mean, I had no future. I was just saying this to you on the way there, but like, if I calculated it out for my marketing job, if I worked the max hours, 9 to 5 in a month, I would get about $1,950.
Yeah,
which is
insane.
Just, you cannot live a life of that making that much in New York. It's just not possible.
Insane.
And I was just, did not know what to do. And yeah, then the opportunity came up to move into this home.
Content creator house.
Yeah.
It was a great idea.
And at the time I was like going back and forth. I really at the time, I didn't want to be on camera anymore. That was kind of still in my post streaming experience when I was in my teens, and then doing a little bit with Fortnite when I was super into Fortnite. And but really I kind of came off that just feeling like I don't want to be on camera anymore. I want to do things behind the scenes. Yeah. And it wasn't really my intention to be back into this. But yeah, then moved into the house, you, me, Jake, Custa, Kurt. Am I missing anybody? Jaws. Dummy for a bit. I mean, it was
Josh
just a rotating cast. Josh had his office for a bit.
For a month.
The St. Patrick's Day stream. the lost tape. I mean, that is, we have burned that onto a VHS, put it in a treasure chest, and buried it somewhere. There is someone will find that in 200 years. They will discover the map and find that buried treasure.
They can see the moment Josh almost bit my fingers off from being so belligerent.
That was one of the most unhinged streams, truly, of all time.
Oh, yes.
And
absolutely.
Listen, I don't want to draw too much attention to it, but luckily for me, that was still in my I don't really want to be on camera. That was when I was running Josh's YouTube channel, and I started Jake's YouTube channel, and I was just enjoying kind of maintaining Josh's viewership and trying to grow it, and then taking Jake's channel from nothing to, it was very successful. I found a lot of gratification in that, and I was kind of just content with doing stuff behind the scenes, even though that wasn't making me a lot of money, but it was making me enough to survive in my 8x12 bedroom where but we were, I remember going into that though, the thought with the house, because this was the Overwatch League homestand year. It's so it was a reasonable sized house, but for 6 to 7 people being there at all times, theoretically, if we were all there, it definitely would have been cramped. But it was fun.
Yeah,
people are going to be traveling. There's going to be 4 people here maximum.
Yeah,
that's totally
at any
fine.
given time. We calculate it 3 or 4 people max at a given time.
And then a month and a half in of not having hot water, except for Jake's shower, we would just rotating cast, getting stepping out of our clown car into Jake's shower, rotating throughout the day because it was the only one with hot water.
Bro,
that was so bad because if I'm not mistaken, the reason was we had a water heater in the attic. Someone checked it out. It wasn't up to code, legal to have a water heater in an attic.
Yep.
And so
they were we don't even know how they got it here.
Yeah.
They were they must have built this. They must have built the house around this water heater in the attic.
And so there was no solution to that. The landlord not helping.
Nope.
And
classic landlord.
All the while, we couldn't get into the garage because we just didn't have the key to it. And then maybe 2 months in, COVID had already been a thing and we were locking down. And she mailed us the key, I want to say.
Yeah, it was just dropped off at some point.
Yeah, dropped off, mailed. We opened the garage and lo and behold, there's the water heater. The landlord, she just didn't know, didn't tell us. I mean, just so stupid. The amount of problems. First question, how do you feel about that situation now when you look back on it? Because I laugh, I chuckle. At the time, I was like, wow, that was miserable. But in hindsight, a funny time living with so many good friends in this disastrous house. It's funny for me in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, horrific. Mentally horrific, because I was at some of my lowest points of my life was in that moment, because it felt like the world was falling apart around us. Like it was like I was right back to where my escapism was casting TF2 in the middle of the night and, live streaming me walking to McDonald's to go eat because somebody had paid me £4 so that I could eat chicken nuggets at 5 a.m. It was almost like we were back to that because we were working remotely, or at least like those of us doing commentary, and we were flipping our sleep schedule every 2 weeks to do the China games and to do the NA games. Can you imagine rotating your sleep schedule, flipping it 180 every 2 weeks? Like what that does to the body during the pandemic when we're locked indoors the entire time, and the entire time we're fighting against the mega colony of California. I'm not kidding, the mega colony.
I have an image burned into my mind. I remember when we were tracing them back to the source. And
the AstroTurf?
I remember lifting up that turf.
Oh my God.
And it was incomprehensible. The human, I felt my brain like short circuit. I'm like, I need to stop looking at this because my brain is going to actually short circuit, and I'm going to just fall over. I'm going to collapse because it could have been it could have been 10,000. It could have been 1 million. I have no idea.
The brain can't comprehend it.
I mean, that's a classic like landlord moment. There was just no warnings or real help about anything going on at that home. And then also, I mean, a content creator house where we couldn't use the internet because
we couldn't create content.
Because we were stuck at the absolute end of the block in the cul-de-sac, where just every home on this long street in this neighborhood were getting prioritized internet over us during COVID. Everyone's home. Every child on this block that is
on a Zoom
streaming Fortnite from their Xbox capture card are getting priority over us. We're trying to have our careers are on the line, and because the plan was, we had a scheduled out stream rotation.
I had to create a rationing stream schedule, like I was one of the fucking dukes in World War II trying to create a rationing system so we could survive like on this tiny island. Genuinely, we didn't have enough internet, and I remember I did a ton of research into internet networking management. I bought two very powerful switches and managed to work out a system where we could maybe get like 4 or 5 of us streaming at a given time.
There's no way it was that many.
It was at a certain point. Yeah. Initially, 2 of us.
I mean, because I remember it was
barely.
2.
Maybe. Initially.
And you were in 240p.
Yep.
It was
and then we genuinely worked out a system. Like I remember going through the networking, and because the router they give you is just awful tech, and it can't manage that many connections and like adequately switch enough. But we had some high powered tech. And we spent a lot of money on those switches, and we set them up. And it definitely helped. I remember we went from 2 people barely being able to stream to like 4, 5 if they used the 5G modem thing that we bought. But they could only upload, they couldn't download, so they couldn't watch videos or anything. They could only play games. So Jake used that a lot. I remember Jake used that a lot to stream because he could play games and he could stream it. But no, it was horrific. Like, it was a content house where we couldn't stream because of the pandemic, with the internet infrastructure getting absolutely just railed. And we were living at the end of the street, so everyone else getting priority. With Spectrum, they are no help at all. I will never go with Spectrum ever again. Sorry if they were thinking about sponsoring the Unnamed podcast. But
they weren't.
They are never getting my business ever again. Like, ever again. And then we were dealing with an ecological disaster on top of just the world feeling like it was falling apart. It was easily one of the worst moments of my life.
Oh, I mean, there was so much wrong. We were in such a catastrophic state, and then the respite was like, hey guys, let's go for a walk.
The walk saved us.
We would walk around the neighborhood, and meanwhile, while we're in this just state of despair on all fronts, being attacked by sadness, we would pass that like super mansion on our block where every other night there'd be 20 Benzes parked in front of it.
Hosting parties.
Security, like wearing sunglasses at night. Like, all right, like 7 foot tall guy, like out front. People are going like, what is? They had a tennis court in their yard.
Yep.
What is happening?
Just people. Just flaunting, breaking the regulations of COVID because they're rich enough, because they can get away with it.
And we're just walking by like, all right, let's go to Ralph's.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm gonna get another
outdoor time.
Bottle of rosé. Remember when we they had on the clearance shelf at Ralph's when we got the 50-50. there was a 50
the boxed wine.
Yeah, there was a 50-50 clearance box. One half was bagged wine, and the other half was a paired Cheez-It flavor.
Yes, the Cheez-It wine.
If that doesn't tell you the state of things
in
that building, I mean, nothing else will. That was, first of all, fantastic invention in one way. Great product, but also
wonderful product.
Truly the most depressing product imaginable. That was
perfect for the time.
Yeah.
Perfect for the time. That bagged wine, that went hard. I mean, I think it was only me and you that partook in that.
Yeah.
The bagged wine of
I think
Cheez-Its and whatever else. But
Tough
that era just sucked. I mean, it was horrible. I don't look back on. I mean, it's funny to laugh about now because, I mean, you laugh through the pain, right? I mean, you laugh through the pain. But yeah, I don't regret it, because those I actually did have a lot of formative experiences in that house. Like, it spurred me on to when we got to Austin, actually, like really diving into therapy, for example. And it made me come to realize I had a bunch of problems in terms of like just the way my brain deals with and organizes work, for example. I realized it made me realize that I had ADHD, or like suspected it enough to get a diagnosis and see a psychologist, psychiatrist about it. And that was very eye-opening. So it was like, as a result of that pain and torment in that house that year, I came out on the other side of things in 2021, and that was one of the best years that I've ever had, because of so much emotional growth, so much just personal development in terms of my life and getting over all this trauma that I had prior, and also just realizing that, you know, it's not that my brain was wrong. It's not that I was stupid. It was that my brain's wired differently. We're not meant to be sat in an office from 9 till 6. We're meant to be in the forest picking nuts and berries off the ground. Like, listen, the ADHD havers we are a symptom of the modern era. Like, this was never a problem back in the day. Like when listen, our only problems were collecting clay from the riverbanks and weaving tails around a fire. This wasn't a problem. We didn't have to take stimulants to survive. It's only because we live in this era of having to sit down and concentrate on long periods of time on work that we don't want to do, and our brains don't produce enough dopamine. But yeah, that instance, I really recognized like some troubling patterns, which was any work I needed to get done, I only did it when I pushed it to the very last minute of my life, when the thing that drove me was the fight or flight response of anxiety, like just pushing me to complete stuff and projects. And I realized that had been occurring my entire life, all throughout my schooling. And it explained so much. It explained so much in my life, from top to bottom. So yeah, I don't regret any of that. It made me the person I am today, which is in a much better place, a much happier place now because of that. Like, a lot of developments learned. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I super relate. That was a time where I was able to kind of begin confronting and stepped away from a lot of trauma, and was able to begin confronting that and understanding certain things that I had experienced that I was just tucking away and ignoring entirely, because that was the easiest defense mechanism. And then slowly going from there, and then eventually, like, I mean, also same thing, but I don't have ADHD, but eventually getting diagnosed with bipolar and being medicated for that, and then being able to actually take control of my life all the time, and not feeling like I was just, in some way, it was my fault for being so depressed that I couldn't do anything, or, you know, whatever state I would be in, the entirely opposite, and in mania. But yeah, I mean, it was a very similar thing, started at the same time, and then similar kind of trajectory. But yeah, and then, I mean, later in that later in that house, that's when Plat Chat and VALORANT also began.
Yeah, started.
And that was, for me at the time, that was just like a no-brainer. Like, I don't know. I was still at a point where it's like, I don't know what I'm really doing. I'm just doing anything to make ends meet. I liked running people's YouTube channels and doing that for them. And then it was like, I just don't. Okay, sure. I mean, I knew people from CS that were competing, and it was just like, sure, I will be on this. There's no reason to say no, even though up until that point, my thought was I don't want to be on camera anymore. And then, yeah, I mean, I pretty much just stuck to it, did like every episode for, I don't know when the first episode I took off was, but I did, every one for a long time in a row. But pretty early on, though, you were on initially, and then you stopped being on for a while when we were in Austin. And at the time, you guys were still doing Overwatch League, and you were casting in our garage, which is demonic because it's like dude, we're in Austin and in the garage. There's no air conditioning. I mean, that is, that was tough. But what was kind of going on at the time? What was the mind state with that, bouncing back and forth and
my mentality was like rock bottom essentially, and it was during 2021 when that happened, and I took time off the Valorant podcast because I realized it was the same. Like, I couldn't sleep at night before the shows. Like, couldn't sleep at night. I was so worried about like the imposter syndrome that was sitting at the back of my head. And I was so down on myself and so depressed just in day to day, because it was also coinciding with the fact that 2021 was a year, like I went into the Overwatch League with all this hopes of just renewal, like almost 2021, homestands didn't follow through. Yes, it's still like online casting, but it should be better, right? Like, we're more set up for it, we're more prepared for it. I have these content ideas, I have ideas that I want to contribute. Like, I want to work on a show that, the people working on it really want to pop off and succeed. And then it hit me that, that wasn't the case. Like, it was, if not, even more so, it was now being almost a skeleton product, a skeleton crew running it. Like, the elements that were making the show so fun to work on in the early years of the Overwatch League were being removed and removed and removed. And it was almost like, for me, the writing was on the wall that the Overwatch League was going to end in like 2 years, 3 years. Like, I could just see at that point, from each year, from how much the budget got lessened and lessened and lessened, for how many liberties they took with that, for like how many people were getting hired to just do basic stuff like creative work, editing. I could just see that they were scaling back tremendously with it. And when viewership dipped as well because of various reasons, it led to me to just a place of apathy where I was just doing it to survive. And I was like questioning whether I even enjoyed being in esports anymore. Like, did I even enjoy that life? Alongside the fact that at that time as well, I had all these like tumultuous feelings where I was like the imposter syndrome at the back of my head whenever I would be on Plat Chat Overwatch or Plat Chat VALORANT around that era. And I remember one night I like had a breakdown where I didn't sleep the entire night. I just couldn't sleep because I was on the show for the next day. And I was so worried about being on the show that it was just so negatively affecting me. And I just remember just thinking, I can't continue like this. I just can't continue. I'm just gonna like run myself ragged if I just try and brute force this and keep trying to do it. I'm gonna do something that I would regret. And then I said in the Plat Chat Disco, I was like, guys, I need to take a massive break, like a mental health break. I need to go to therapy. I need to do anything to solve all of that. And thankfully, at the Plat Chat compound, we are quite a compassionate and empathetic lot. And everybody was cool with it. They just, they were like, yep, take all the time you need. And I think I took more time than they probably thought I would take, because I took months off. Like, we were doing the first co-streams and I wasn't even on the show on a regular basis. I would just pop in every now and then because I was in the same house, and that was very, very helpful to me to just get my feet wet and just be in the background. Because again, I didn't want to be the center of attention. I had nothing to prove, but it was just nice to partake in it. It felt really good to just watch the games with friends and, just have fun in that capacity. And that was a really nice thing to just slowly get back into things with. But yeah, alongside that was just me going to therapy and having that realization of my brain being wired in that way where I am driven by anxiety, and those responses, the fight or flight response, was the only way I could get stuff done. And realizing that opened my eyes up massively once I got diagnosed for ADHD, because it took me a while to get onto the right medication for it. But since then, it's night and day. I mean, the amount of preparation, the amount of confidence I feel when I go on a show now on Plat Chat VALORANT, or just in general with my broadcast work or my professional life, is is unbelievable. And it comes down to the fact that I'm now able to properly prepare for it. I'm now able to actually sit down and analyze a VOD for long periods of time. I was never able to do that. I was never able to sit down and watch a VOD if I knew it already played. The thing that drove me on to watch live VODs in esports was the unknown. But if I already knew the outcome, I would have absolutely zero desire to watch it. Like zero desire at all. And so yeah, me getting diagnosed solved so much. Therapy helped a tremendous amount. And then just, you know, slowly getting my feet wet again, just like hanging out with everybody in the Plat Chat house when we were doing those initial co-streams. And then, you know, there was a chance as well. I was like, I didn't want to force myself in because the show had been going so long without me. But I'm very grateful to the fact that you know, you guys let me rotate back into Valorant again. Because I was like, yeah, I mean, I've been away. I think I was away for almost half a year. I mean, it was a long time. It was a long time.
But I forgot that, yeah, because even during Reykjavik, you were just kind of hanging out, but you weren't on the show at the time.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, yeah, because that's when we brought in Bala initially, and we're taking things from there.
Time.
But yeah, was it? I mean, that was then around that time. That season of the Overwatch League ended. You were participating more again on Plat Chat, which was after, because you came back during the first LCQ, I think, right? That's like around when you started coming back, I want to say.
Yes. I think, yeah, it was. It was around that time. Yeah. And definitely so, yeah, it was.
So then after that, there was a few more months left in the year, because I think also that year LCQ was way later in the year, because then Champions was in December.
Yeah, December time.
When Ascend won. The most, you know, sorry guys, the most forgettable win in Valorant.
Yeah.
You know, congrats, but also sorry about that. And then the next year, or during that time, was when you were negotiating with Owl, right? So was it difficult to come to the conclusion that you'd be stepping away and going into Valorant full time, or was that a pretty straightforward, like, this is the move to make?
From a careers perspective, yeah. I mean, I knew that it was just inevitable to move away from the Overwatch League, but it still hurt the way the negotiations ended. Even though, you know, reflecting on it now, I know that the level of work I was putting in for a variety of reasons wasn't good. Like, I was just dealing with apathy towards it. So I can't really be too surprised that they didn't reach out again after we turned down the initial offer. But it definitely felt bad, because it felt like we had built, you know, we were there to build the Overwatch League up from the ground up from the beginning. And when we didn't get reached out to, which I think was just down to like logistical stuff as well, I believe, like I think it was literally like a change of staff in terms of who was doing the negotiating around that period of time. And I guess the follow-up person wasn't involved, or if they were consulted ahead of time about our situation, they just didn't care enough to reach out. But either way, the community blew up, like, when we didn't get picked up around that time. And I think part of that as well just got us on Riot's radar with the podcast. And yeah, like, I definitely think that was a contributing factor to us being picked up around that time. But yeah, I was immensely grateful for that opportunity as well. Like, just another chance to do something in esports, because like I said, not many people get that chance after, you know, being scorned away in one industry. Because when you commit to a game, you're committing everything. You don't really have time to be juggling. Unlike, I mean, we kind of were by doing the podcast at the same time. We had one foot in the door, so it wasn't exactly like we were just jumping in anew. But yeah, it's rare to get granted those second chances and opportunities. But once we got gifted it, I was chomping at the bit to really just pop off and showcase what I could do. Yeah, I can't remember where we started at with that conversation. Why?
I think you answered the question.
Yeah, I think so as well. I don't know.
It happens. That's when you talk for a living, you talk a lot, and then leads places. Recently, then, with the Overwatch League was slowly lowered into its grave. Yeah, you all tossed some handfuls of dirt on top of it in the coffin, and it's a wrap. And this is another moment where, there's another moment where I do have a tweet.
A log?
Where I do just, we'll lead this into it. But you just said that what I can say is that I wouldn't be the person I am today without Al. working it during some of my formative years under tutelage from some of the greatest was a blessing. So this is a first question with this would be, in your time in the Overwatch League, what were the key things that you learned, and sort of from who within the league you learned them from?
Puckett taught me what it really means to produce a desk, which I had never had. And I'm very grateful for that, because I was so green to the entire industry when I came into the Overwatch League, especially that desk environment. It's my first time doing an analyst desk, but Puckett has been doing it for years and years and years and years. But what Puckett is also very good at compared to a lot of other esports hosts, because I've worked with a lot of esports hosts and a lot of people, and their methodologies widely differ. But Puckett is very hands-on, and he produces a lot of the segments himself, and he was really driven and was constantly trying to tell the most entertaining story, the best story. What is applicable in this match right here? What will draw people in? And he was constantly trying to cook up ways that would do that in a creative manner, which was awesome. Like, that was really, really good to be around as just like almost just a guiding mentor. Even if he didn't, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like he was approaching us from that mentor position. But I think for both me and Josh, it was really, really helpful to be in that spot. 100%. And I think Goldenboy as well, to a lesser degree, for giving me confidence. Not necessarily during like the Overwatch League days, but I think just before that, he was one of the first people to say like, hey, you can actually make something of yourself in this industry. Like, Goldenboy was one of the first people to say that to me and actually give me that level of confidence. And Goldenboy does that a lot with a lot of up and comers in the industry. Like, I've literally witnessed him down the corridor talking to younger talent, being like, you've got it. Like, you are it. You have what it takes to really make something of yourself. You are one of the, you have that semblance of talent that can really be nurtured. So Goldenboy is a really good just person in the space for that kind of stuff. Then it just came with the whole emotional development of, I'm going from 20, 21, 22 onwards in this, like, thrusted into this position, into the limelight. You get given all this money, you get given your own place where you're living, and you're living it up in Los Angeles. And I'd never had that before. It came with a whole bundle of opportunities that just opened up, because I never had money when I was growing up, like, ever. I was always just, my family would, I was raised in a single parent household, and my mum, she did the best that she could, but there's always going to be certain experiences that you're not going to be privy to because you don't have money. Like, the same level of resources that are provided to you just aren't there. But I had them at that point, which I'm very grateful for. And living in that big city, a bustling city, for the first time actually living in a big city like that was amazing. Just even if it was Los Angeles, which, listen, with the power of hindsight, LA is LA. But it was fantastic at the time when I was living there, and I'm really grateful that was the area where I had that emotional growth, and could make a lot of mistakes and fumble, but still have the safety net of working in the Overwatch League in that entire time and having that sort of growth as a person. Very, very grateful for those years. I really am, and the fact that I worked with very, very talented people in terms of the talent team that weren't necessarily ego driven. Like, don't get me wrong, it played a part, but the Overwatch League was built from a talent perspective of focusing on product first and just making sure that there was no like conflicting, bashing, bruised egos with like, who does this, who does that. It felt very much purpose built to be like, almost, it's cliche Fast and Furious, but like a family, like we're family, but genuinely, like, it felt built that way, where we were in it together. Like, we were all here to build something awesome, and that was the sole goal. And my God, we were trying to sail the rudderless ship through the corporate hell that was Activision Blizzard, baby, trying to run this $1 million league of all the venture capitalist investment. But we did our best, and it really did felt like a team. There was no ill will really at all. It felt like it at any time from my perspective. But also, I was at the bottom of the rung in terms of talent. Had nothing to lose. It was only new experiences for me. Maybe it was there and I just couldn't see it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm super grateful for those years. I mean, obviously, I don't gain any pleasure by the Overwatch League like falling to the wayside, because I know good people are gonna lose out on work and potentially their livelihoods because of it. So it's sad all around. Yeah. Do you feel
an emotional attachment to the Overwatch League to the extent that it being over, brings you sad emotions, any kind of emotions? Because what kind of caught me off guard, but I find very interesting is I asked the day I did one of these with Josh was the day that the Overwatch League, that initial announcement came out. And I asked him the same question, and his answer was basically no. To me, this was a job. It was a career. If something like Plat Chat died, yes. But with this, it was a career. I was working elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do you feel similarly different?
I think if I was working with it all the way through until the bitter end, I would have felt much more sadness, and I would have felt differently. But I understand where Josh is coming from to a degree, because when we got the cold shoulder, it's almost like a reality check to, yes, this is a job. Like, it doesn't matter how much, mental health you sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears you put into the product from the get-go. It doesn't matter, because you can be replaced at the will of another person, and you can be dropped at the will of another person. So that has led me, it also kind of helped the fact that we had already like casted TF2 and moved on to other games. Like, we started another game. I had done Dota and God knows what else, like fucking Hello Kitty Island Adventures at some point, probably, I don't know. But the fact that you've done multiple games, I think, builds up almost like a protective barrier to when you do move games eventually, if you choose to. So yeah, I think it was that cold reality check when you do get that, just kind of that blunt response of like, oh well, see ya. You didn't accept our shitty offer that we were trying to put time pressure onto you with. It's like, okay, that's it. I guess that's years of your work just kind of like settled there. The chapter is closed, whether you liked it or not. And so, yeah, the reality check of that, I think, definitely contributes to the feeling of like, I'm sad that it's over, but I don't feel, I feel like it was inevitable. Like it's expected, but I'm still upset because, it's I've got so much history and attachment to it. But at the same time, it's life. Sometimes you just don't get reached out to. Sometimes you can put everything into something and it won't succeed. Yeah,
it doesn't provide the same emotional strength as the video of us slowly vanishing from the couch with the up music.
Oh my
from the Go streams.
Who made that?
I don't know if Connor made that. I'm sure someone else made it and he posted it.
That broke me. Like, I genuinely was watching that. I was like, man, you can't be doing this to me. Like, genuinely, because I genuinely do hold such an attachment to those co-streaming days.
It was lightning in a bottle.
It really was. It really was, because we were all in person in the moment right there. We all got along with each other. There was all just pure chemistry. We're invested in the games, invested in the scene. And genuinely, we were just, the right thing, but at the wrong time. Like, if we were a year later.
Yeah.
Even now, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, if we don't work a global show, if we don't work a global event, I'm telling you right now, I am making this happen. We have to do a couch co-stream. I will pay for people's flights.
The only thing that would have made those better is if Bala could have come in real life. That's really the only thing that was missing, which was just, I can't remember why. Financial,
he was working
timing.
The events.
Oh,
a lot of the time.
He was working the events. That was before any of us were working the events.
Sometimes he came on like on a call.
Yeah,
but
he was on a call. Yeah,
he was working the events.
He was working way before any of us. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But yeah,
we got to do it. We got to do it. If there's a chance, if a chance arises, we have to do it. I mean, I am determined to make this happen. Just a return, just one last ride. And like, listen, it doesn't have to be in the Plat Chat compound because that's going.
The sunset.
Seriously, yes, yeah.
Man, this is just going back to something you said earlier, but I feel like I just have to say it. Which is, I've said this on my, previously when I was streaming, I've said it on my stream and told the same thing, but man, I can't say enough nice things about GB, Goldenboy.
Yeah.
He is so cliche that what I'm about to say doesn't even feel real, but it really was the case. When I first was visiting, before I moved, when you guys were living in the Philadelphia Fusion House, and I visited for a couple weeks in LA, and then moved there before the pandemic started. When we were going out and I was meeting people, and you guys knew everyone in the esports space, and like, you were always trying to, like introducing me to people and various things, and I'd be talking to people. And listen, there was definitely, I thought that I was feeling the cold shoulder and the like, who is this guy? Does he provide value? Who is he in this space? Moment. And at the time, I just felt like surely not, because I don't know. I just felt like that wasn't the case. But And you know, I'm not going to assign it purely to that. I also was like a new face and that kind of thing, just in general. But the way that I get responded to and treated in certain spaces and things now is so
night and day.
But it really stood out to me immediately. GB was just the greatest guy. I had no idea who I was. I wasn't doing anything in the space at the time. And he was just the nicest guy.
He is.
And he was just a great dude. And I've learned a ton working with him.
Yeah.
He's always super helpful. Also, I think he subconsciously got me into wrestling, which is now just my favorite thing. So I have to appreciate him for that too.
Yep.
With his just like
he'll be glad for that.
Subconscious just infiltration. Like when we were doing the co-stream in Copenhagen and we were on the couch and I remember he was going off and I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. But now I know exactly what he was talking about, which was Cody Rhodes leaving AEW and coming back to the WWE at WrestleMania as the surprise guest. He was talking about that, didn't know what he was talking about, and now I remember that and know exactly what he's talking about. So it's just pretty funny. But I really like. I mean, I just a lot of respect for GB.
Yeah,
working with him is so easy. It is unbelievable. Yeah. Like it really is.
Yeah, he makes everybody feel welcome, and he's the antithesis of the clout chaser LA archetype that is just immediately sizing you up in terms of your self-worth and what you can do for them. He doesn't care about that. He just cares that you're a decent person and you're cool to hang out with. Like, genuinely, he's an outstanding dude in terms of that regard. And I talked about it. Like, he was one of the first people to like say, you have a future in this industry. Like the cliche line, it could be out of a movie. Like I remember we were walking from the parking lot of a sports wings bar because Matt Morello wanted to watch the game, whatever the fuck the game was. I don't know what it was. We were walking back and I was like talking to him about all my doubts and everything because I'm quite an earnest guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve sometimes when it comes to that. I like to be quite open about what I'm going through to people. And I had been working with GB enough and I was talking to him about it. And yeah, he straight up told me, he was one of the first people to tell me, like, you have a future. Like, just keep at it. Like he said, he's seen enough talent to know when someone's got it. And he was like, you and Josh have it. Like you will make it. You will go far. You will go far. He was like, I guarantee you. And like that level of encouragement and support, never got that. Like really. In the industry, like it's very rare to get that just in general, especially like I'm not saying now I don't need a pat on the back now these days because Lord knows I do it to myself enough when I'm like listening back to my own cast, but you know at an early point he's always been doing that for people who are just up and coming.
Yeah, I mean at the first Reykjavik for the first international LAN I did like an analyst desk just free spot where I was just on one of the desks remote, before Fnatic V1. My setup wasn't honestly is terrible. Like I still, when I cast Game Changers, put a fake microphone, which is one of the Plat Chat mics, and I say fake because it's not plugged in. I don't have a mixer or anything, and I just have it in front of my face, and I have a Blue Yeti in a candle. With all the melted wax, because it fits in there, off screen, so you can't see it. Like that is for some reason, I despise upgrading technology. I don't know why.
That's reasonable.
I will spend money on other stuff that I don't need, like eccentric antiques, but I will not upgrade my job. I just refuse. I don't know why. I hate spending money on it. But I mean, I remember I was doing that spot on Josh's setup in his house.
Setup, I remember, in
the other half of the house, and the compound rather. And he, and I mean, I had to get up super early for it. For like the call time because it was in Reykjavik and at the time we were all online and GB was just in the smoky on the ground like studio and we're all on a screen next to me. It was me, Doug, and Potter, I think. And I mean, I was hyperventilating before we were going on there. I mean, like I was so nervous. Yeah. And then he just like set me up in the easiest way, and I just had like the freest corner three. Like he just was so. I mean, it was just. Yeah. I mean, and immediately was like, dude, this guy is so good. Yep. And I remember, I think I said that to you guys when I came back. I was like, dude, GB is like, this guy's just so good.
Yeah, I remember.
And then working with him in person in the studio, and I'm like, all right, well, there's our 10-minute Goldenboy segment, just talking about how great GB is. But yeah, goddamn. man. So I guess one of the things I did want to ask you too, just in we've throughout the journey of Overwatch into Valorant, all that huge progress. Do you ever take kind of some time, or do you ever, not even consciously, just comes up in your brain, sort of reflect on where you came from at the beginning of your life and where you were sort of at there, the circumstances you were in, and how far you've come now?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I was going to describe it as outstanding, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's such a rarity. I know the circumstances that I was raised in, I was born in, and I talk about it on stream sometimes, but like, and I mentioned already on the show, but like a single parent household we never had money growing up. And for a significant portion of like my upbringing, it was in an abusive household because of like my mum's partner. Like she met another dude and he wasn't very nice. And growing up through all of that, all those circumstances, I now know like the statistics are not likely for a kid that grows up in that household to have a well-functioning life onwards, and to even have a modicum of success in most things they do. They don't have the resources, they don't have the same structure and support structure around them compared to other families. I had a lot of support in my mum and my grandmother, my family in that regard. They were really my guiding lights in terms of just, being that way. But I definitely had hardships as well that set me back compared to other people. It's kind of, it's weird to just think, okay, well, the small amount of circumstances came together that allowed me to escape from that kind of life and background and whatever else. And it is amazing to think back on and to think about where I'm at right now. And I'm very, very, very grateful, especially to my grandmother, who, like, she also doesn't have a lot of money, but she worked hard her life. She came from the era where if you did work hard, you could buy a house. Like, that doesn't exist anymore, but it did. And so she actually did manage to buy her house working like 2 jobs at the same time way back in like the 70s, I think, 70s, 80s. And she saved up a lot of money. And one of the things she did for me when I was like 13 was she took me like around the world on like a trip. She like was very savvy with her spending. She bought really cheap flights. It was in the era of when flights were incredibly cheap. You could pick them up if you knew where to look and plan the itinerary properly. And when I was like 13, 14, she took me on like a trip to just see outside the world, because outside of that, I'd only ever been to like cheapish holidays that was like £20 for a flight to Spain or Greece, which are very common in the UK, like, because Europe's so small. But she wanted me to see more of the world outside of just the small bubble that was my council estate home in the UK. And it was like very eye-opening, I think, at that point in my life, because I was just at the right age to really appreciate it and understand how much she had to sacrifice to do that for me. And even reflecting now on, like, reflecting how much my mum has sacrificed as well to raise me. Like, she went through nursing school at the age of like in her 40s. So she went back to school again. Like, most people don't ever even want to do that. They don't even think about that. They don't, the concept of like actually having to step back and accept like, okay, maybe I can do this when you've been beaten down your entire life is nothing short of incredible. I have so much respect for my mum for that, because again, she comes from an era of just like the baked in misogyny into the school system of the UK, where women were expected to just learn textiles and cooking. And like, that was their extra studying that went a bit further beyond, and like they were expected to just be housewives, and that was it. Like, if you're told your entire life you are, stupid, you're going to believe it to a certain degree. If you're told your entire life you can only achieve a certain amount, you are going to believe it. But she broke past that, went back to school, and it was mad hard. She's raising 2 kids, and at that point had left the dude that she got with, and she was doing it all just by herself, and studying way late into the night, and many times almost broke down and thought that she couldn't do it. But she ended up doing it, and she did it because she wanted a better life for me and my sister and everyone else. So I have very good guiding role models in that regard with my grandmother, with my mum, with what they did for me, because they did really just carve out those opportunities with their own health and well-being. Like, yeah, we didn't have much. We didn't have any money. Like, I remember times when the power would get turned off. Like, we just wouldn't have electricity. But they really did just carve that out just so that I would have the chance just to see more of the world, just to actually have more opportunities, which I'm mad grateful for. And then of course there's that semblance of luck where it's just, the right opportunity comes at the right time and just making sure that you snap up onto it. But one of my favorite phrases is, luck is just opportunity meeting preparation. You have to be prepared for the opportunities that you come across, and you can self-describe it as luck if you want to. But the reality is, something comes your way, you need to be ready to be able to grasp it. And yeah, for every opportunity that came my way, I was in a position where I could just like use it as the next stepping stone and get to this point now, which is, yeah, it's ridiculous to think back on, because yeah, statistically people don't do well, like when they're from that level of background, just in general. But yeah, here I am. So
yeah, and with no, realistically, we talked about it earlier with the Tesco thing, but that was similar to you. I was terrible in school. Didn't give a care. I was showing up, sleeping through everything. Went to college because I felt like I had to. Just didn't show up to classes. Got kicked out. Didn't want to be there. Didn't want to go. No desire. And just no, I don't know. Just, realistically, no plan. Just thoughts of like, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. Try and do something in gaming, maybe. Try other things. And then just all the time I spent in gaming, just eventually something comes up after however many years of meandering, like from, I don't know, if you count when I started competing in TF2, like 15 to 24, if I'm just going to count being on Plat Chat VALORANT as like the turning point, because it definitely was.
Yeah.
But, so just 9 years of meandering about, which, also is not an entirely uncommon thing. You're not really supposed to know. It's more so in the moment, and when you're there, it feels like, at least for me, it always just felt like it was taking forever, and I was so concerned about where things were going. And now, for a litany of reasons, just can feel way more kind of comfortable, and it doesn't feel so long, or
like you're
losing
time,
retrospect, I suppose. That sort of thing. But
I completely agree. Yeah, and it's that as painful as the past might be, it's what got us here in the present, where we are in a more comfortable and better spot now.
Could have been a beekeeper.
Could have been a beekeeper. I was like, there in one of the universes, I am keeping bees and dying of hay fever allergies.
That is the. What was the context of that? That's the final Tesco hidden lore story.
So yeah, this is you made it this far into the show. You get the hidden lore of me. Like I said, I would just spend hours helping people who came into Tesco, because, dude, the entire job, I didn't really explain this contextually, but the entire job set up, like the Geek Squad, whatever, their entire job in these places exists solely to sell insurance on items. That's it. Their entire existence, my entire existence in Tesco Tech, the entire existence of them is to sell the extra guarantee warranty, just to tack it on, because 99% of people don't accept it. It's free money for the companies. They don't ever claim it. It's free money for the companies, 99% of the time. And so I would spend a lot of my time. I quickly realized that was the sole purpose of my job, and we didn't have a manager that cared about any targets being hit. So I never hit them. I think I sold one insurance policy in my entire time at that store in that particular tech department. And the one time I did it, I felt immediately terrible, because I offered it, because they say you got to offer it to everyone, whether they want it or not. And I offered it to an old man, and he accepted on a £12 toaster. And it was like £10 the insurance. And I was just like, and like I realized afterwards, obviously at the time going through the motions because you don't care when you're young, but I realized afterwards, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. I literally just took advantage of an old man, and I immediately realized it, and I'm like, that is horrific. And then from that point on, I never sold a single insurance, just ever again. I'm very proud of that fact. Stole so much money from that corporation. That's unbelievable. But part of my job was like, okay, I would actually genuinely help people. I was of some use to the company. I wasn't always dossing around. They had a photo machine at the front of the store, and this photo machine would constantly break. And every time on a tan, I'd be like, if anybody from the tech department could come to the front of the store, the photo machine is out of order. Because every time customers would go up to the photo machine, go to print out their photos, something would fucking break. And it wasn't our job. They would have to call an outside company normally, but the customers are complaining. And I wasn't doing anything, so I'm like, fuck it, I'll take a look at this. And so sometimes I would go up there and like, do you have the keys to open it up? I'd go open it up. It would be like a paper jam or something, like fix it. Sometimes it would get fixed, sometimes it wouldn't. In steps this man, as rural as could be. There's twigs in his hair. He's wearing like a torn up green jumper with like a bee inscribed on it. And he's chatting away to me about his family in Australia. His sons have gone off to start bee farms in Australia. And he's like showing me pictures on his camera. And he's like, I want to print this off because it's for like an insurance claim because there's this disease that's affecting the bees in Australia. And he needs to print off these photos for the insurance claim for them. But they needed his old photos of when he visited them as evidence. And so he's trying to print them off to send to them. And I'm not kidding you, from the start of my shift, got in there at like, I think 8 a.m. until I left at like 7 p.m. with this dude at the photo machine, this beekeeper. And the entire time I'm trying to fix the problem. I'm trying to fix it. And I stay with him the entire time, and he's chewing my ear off the entire time, yapping away. He's talking about the bee business, the beekeeping business. And he's got this website, and he paid this dude for the website, but he got scammed on it. I'm like, well, I've built a website before in my computer like class that I'm doing. I was like, I might be able to do it. And he was like, you would do that for me? So like, I never actually built the website for him. He never reached out to me, but he wanted me to build his website. He was showing me his thing. He started showing me pictures of his farm that he's got just around the corner, these massive fields. By the end of it, he was so impressed with my gusto, my real drive, the fact that I stayed with him there the entirety of my shift. Like, didn't have lunch. I just stayed with him trying to fix it. He was so impressed. He offered me a job to work on his bee farm there and then. He was like, do you want to come work for me? He was like, listen, you don't have to pay rent. I have a place with a bunch of illegal immigrants that are working on it. He told me this.
He just said that.
Yep, straight up. He was like, it has electricity.
That's bold.
It has electricity, water, heat, and you could have your own room, and you could come work on my farm. You could come work for me, because I think the guy, like back in the day, he probably had his sons working for him, and they went off to go create their own little farm businesses. But he was so impressed with my gusto that he offered me the job, and I was in such a state that I almost considered it. I genuinely was
that during the TF2
era? It was when I was playing TF2, but not casting it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was when I was playing TF2 but not casting it, and I was just gaming and just in this tech, and I didn't really know what I was doing with my life, and I was just like, maybe this is the path I should take. So there's another world where I have hay fever, by the way, crippling hay fever, where if I like go out during the summer, like I just my entire face just blows up, tears streaming down, I can't breathe properly. So, but I was considering it still. I genuinely thought I'll just build up tolerance to it. That was my thought process at the time. Just like, you know how like people build up tolerance to allergies over time? Don't think it works like that. I think you need to microdose it, not just raw dog it by going out into a field. But I was considering it. And yeah, that man, he's out there somewhere. I don't know what his farm was called. Can't really remember too many details. But I remember the website. It was awful. And I remember the farm, and he showed me pictures of the accommodation. And the one thing that...
Was it nice?
I mean, it was a place to live.
Right.
And you wouldn't be paying rent. But the one thing that turned me away from it, no internet, so I couldn't play TF2.
I mean, listen, at that point in life, that is the most crucial thing imaginable.
No internet there, yeah.
Another Bren. But,
yeah.
All right, so you're back off to Korea tomorrow?
Well, actually, I'm going to Vegas tomorrow.
Oh, right,
for the
esports awards. Come on, you can't tell me you don't have a big ego after being nominated.
I got nominated for the esports. Listen, I didn't want to say it. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you said it. No, I mean, the esports awards is a fun time to meet people that you wouldn't normally see in esports. But every time I've gone, it is the sycophants awards. It is like you could paint a picture of the old medieval court society, and the after party is always just people who win awards and a bunch of people just like, oh, yeah, you're so good. Congratulations, you're so good. Which, listen, everybody there is good. That's the whole point of being nominated. Like, everyone deserves an award, but it's very funny to see like that LA side of society. I love a good
corporate mixer.
I love
that.
Every time creeps in of just like, just trying to get in the good graces of people that they are, seeing. And it happens every time. And like I'm going this time because it's on the way. I'm going back to Korea to just go spend 3 months with Alice, basically, which I'm looking forward to immensely. And the esports awards, less so. No, don't get me wrong. Very happy to be nominated. It means quite a bit to be nominated. But in terms of winning the award, literally boils down to a voting competition where you could vote every day if you wanted to. And so, I mean, genuinely, like, who knows?
Bought the voting system.
Yeah, so it's based on like popularity. It's based on who's been shilling it the most. So, getting nominated is enough for me. It does mean a lot because I felt like I did really well. Like I've said numerous times, I felt like I did really well with my career. But off to Vegas, gonna put it all on red. All the savings.
God,
see what I can get out of it. But yeah, see some people and then off to Korea.
Yeah. Has Alice added more stability to your life or more unhinged energy?
Both.
She gives you.
I mean, both. I would say like.
The unhinged energy is off the charts.
She's definitely unhinged. I mean, we're both unhinged to a degree, but she's been unnecessarily, like, she has been a lot of stability in my life. Just, I mean, it's been a lot of traveling, like, back and forth just to see each other. And because of her job, she can't really travel to see me, but I have the means to do it. So I will do it. And I don't mind being in Korea for long periods of time. Korea is a lovely place to just be situated for like a month or 2 or 3. So it's she's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So I'm gonna be sappy for a little bit and love her very much. And so
now that was my sappy question to get you to give you an opportunity to give one last little little adorable sappy moment. Then all right, it's time to go drink some silly hot.
Yeah, we're gonna have some.
Let's go get some silly
ciders.
Hot sake cider beverages before you go in the morning. But all right, thank you for joining me.
Of course,
Brennon Hook.
anytime.
All right. We're all good, Allie.